Listen, you smell something?
Human emotions are materializing in the form of a viscous psychoreactive plasm with explosive supernormal potential.
What a discovery, a psychoreactive substance.
Do you know what this equipment is used for?
Boggle or Super Mario Brothers?
We'll have fun!
Yeah!
They're still doing it. Really quite good work there.
My friend, don't be a jerk.
We've got no choice. Call the Ghostbusters.
Super Jackpot!
Welcome to Extraplasm Podcast. It's the only podcast on the internet that believes we need to launch a covert fan mission to borrow, the Universal Studio Ecto-1 and its parade float and drive them straight on up to New York City for the lineup for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It's fine. Nobody will mind if we show up and crash it. We'll bring it back later. It's a holiday, everybody. I'm your host, Jim Maritato, aka Vink Maniac on the internet, and I'm both excited and thankful to be bringing you episode 103. We're just about to celebrate Thanksgiving here in the United States, as well as unofficially mark the start of the holiday buying season with Black Friday at the end of the week. And that means there's a lot of gifting and giving and charitable activity going on. Those are three things that our two guests this week are poised to do alongside dozens of Ghostbusters franchises across the globe. Joining me this week are Luna X Mars of the NYC Ghostbusters and Charlie Rivera of the Long Island Ghostbusters, two folks who I've not had on the show before, but I've been really eager to chat with and who I've gotten to know a little bit during my trips to New York City for Ghostbusters Day and for the premiere, etc. And Charlie even is somebody who I've gotten to know via my family because they've encountered him as a Ghostbuster out in the world before I ever did, and we became bonded friends as a result of that. So Charlie and Luna are amazing people who are going to be co-hosting this year's Ghostbusters Toy Drive Telethon on YouTube on December 2nd, which is going to feature representatives from franchises all over the United States and beyond who are detailing their holiday toy drive and charitable giving efforts. It's a really amazing program that they're going to be putting on the 2nd that you can check out at 8 p.m. Eastern. There's definitely details in this episode on how to watch this year's Toy Drive Telethon, like later on, as well as to how to submit your Ghostbusters Toy Drive of your own to the central database if you'd like to be listed alongside those other folks. But for good measure, I'll also tell you now so I don't forget to later, make sure you go and check out whoyougonacall.org/toy drive to watch the stream via YouTube, as well as to see how you might be able to contribute by dropping off a toy or hosting a toy drive in your area. And as you know, I love me some New Yorkers and I love me some charitable Ghostbusters efforts. And so that means I'm super excited to share this chat with Luna and Charlie with you in a few moments. And this week, we're not just bringing you a fun chat about what they're going to be working on and what their telethon's about, but we're also bringing you something special for the holiday season, because on the back end of this episode is the final thing that we do in the last, 30 to 40 to 50 minutes. You're going to have to go check it out and take a look for yourself. There's a commentary, a watch-along commentary for the appropriately Thanksgiving parade-themed Real Ghostbusters episode, Revenge of Murray the Mantis. And if you don't remember this one, you should, because it's the one where Stay Puft is brought back from the containment unit and engages in a big kaiju big battle with a giant mantis, and then becomes a parade float, which almost seems like it was like a precursor to another movie. I digress. But before we can get into any of that awesomeness, into the conversation with Luna and Charlie or the commentary ahead, we do need to talk about some Ghostbusters headlines.
Still making headlines all across the country, the Ghostbusters are at it again.
Today, the entire eastern seaboard is alive with talk of incidents of paranormal activity.
Phone-in topic today, ghosts and ghostbusting.
Extraplasm, read all about it. Ghostbusters headlines coming at ya.
In Ghostbusters headlines this week, it seems that the company that's going to rule the day or rule the week in terms of coverage is Hasbro. I think that all of us who are listening to this podcast or anyone who subscribes knows that we are a mere 5 days away from the closure of the Ecto-1 HasLab crowdfund that's currently happening for the anniversary edition HasLab that fits 1/12 size action figures. You all know that this is something that is near and dear to my heart and that I need us to have go well because there's a lot of things in life that are not going well, and I really want this to be a thing that we all can be happy about. That being said, has it backed yet? No. And that is a little scary. I talked about this last week that I was concerned about what's happening with the marketing with this product because it doesn't seem there's a lot of direct marketing happening with it. And in the week that followed, there were some interesting things that happened on the internet, but none of them seemed to be direct marketing. So if you haven't seen some of these things already because you've been under a rock since the last episode of Extra Plasm by any chance, there was a roundtable Q&A that happened on the 21st with Emily Bader and Pat from the HasLab team. They sat down with Jason Fitzsimmons from Ghostbusters News, Craig Goldberg from Yes Have Some, Jay Glatfelter from Geek Dad Life, and a gentleman whose name is Dave, whose last name I totally forget from Adventures in Collecting Podcasts. But I will say he has a great Lagwagon t-shirt and has a good taste in music. So sorry, Mr. Dave, for not remembering your last name. But they had an hour-long Q&A that answered a lot of questions about, what would you be getting with this if you didn't already know, questions about what kinds of decals might be offered with it. There were some discussions about whether or not there would be more Plasma series figures, and essentially a tease suggesting that if this went well, that it might mean that there could be re-releases of the 84 figures, meaning the four guys from 84, re-released with updated faces or updated sculpts, which I'm going to be honest with you, is not that big of a draw for me. If you tell me that the reason why we should back this car is because you might sell me 4 more of the same guys, I'm not that compelled. I was way more compelled to buy it before you told me that, for all the reasons that the car is good, but having 4 more of the same figures again is not a thing I need. And I should tend to think that the very warmed pegs that held 4 of the same guys who were slimed should tell us that, but I digress. The second time I'm going to say that in the podcast. But the point being here that there's a Q&A. You can go watch it. It's an hour long. I don't have a lot to report on this because it essentially rehashes a lot of what you already know about this product. And it gets into some details about, will this be something that if it doesn't get backed, will it get produced? Like, of course not. It's a HasLab. This is how this works. So if you're a person out there who's on the fence about this, you should probably go back this, because it's not going to be a thing you can get afterwards if you don't go back it. And if not enough of us back it, nobody's getting it. And that's the really fun thing to think about right now, is that for all the complaining that I've done about Mondo figures costing too much and everything else, those Mondo figures are 100% getting produced. Whereas we will see what happens with this HasLab. That being said, another thing you can go take a look at from this HasLab is that there is a series of prototypes that were released to a few different folks on the internet. Yes, Have Some, I believe, got one, and Jason over at Ghostbusters News got one. They are prototypes of the Slimer figure for this release. He is one of the pack-in items that's supposed to be with the car, and it seems that the Hasbro team sent them some little figures. You can check out Jason's review of this because he does a really deep unboxing of the Plasma series Slimer prototype that he received. It only makes me want it more. I want it painted, of course. The prototype is cool, but I want a finished one. I want to know that this thing is going to get backed and we're going to be okay. And we'll see. We'll see if we're going to get there at this point. As of the time the podcast is being recorded, we are essentially in the ballpark of between 9,800 and 9,900 of these particular things being backed. So will we get there in the next 5 days? That is, at this point, anybody's guess. It does seem a little more bleak each day because you got to have more and more people essentially back it in the time frame you have left. Let me change my estimate here. Apparently, we've crossed the threshold in the time since I started recording this podcast that we are now at 10,182 backers. So somebody ring a bell. We made it to 5 digits. Now we got to get less than 2,000 more of these things sold in 5 days so that your podcast host doesn't bring you a podcast next week that is essentially an autopsy of the campaign, and instead brings you a podcast that is a celebration of how wonderful it is that we're all getting cars. I'm joking about this to some extent, but I also really want to make sure that we get this thing. So if you haven't backed it yet, and you're on the fence, please go back it. Please go do this. Let me be a happy person in his 40s who gets the thing he's been wanting and talking about ever since it was first teased to us in June, and before that, ever since Toy Guru screwed up trying to get us one at Mattel years ago. So please don't let this be the second crowd-funded Ecto-1 in 10 years that just doesn't happen. Get on board and help out with this. I'd really appreciate it. But I'll also tell you that if you want to see a fun video beyond what I've told you about already, Matt Cardona, wrestler Matt Cardona, got a good look at the Ecto-1 alongside our friend Ectotech, Greg Hilliard, who's been on the show before. The Hasbro team stopped by Greg's house, which is kind of funny to say, and saw his Ecto-1A, which is recently completed, and they brought 2 of the cars with them and all of the things and accoutrements to show them off next to an actual real deal fan-built, like, super accurate replica. And if you've ever seen Ecto-1NJ, then that's a car that Greg has also worked on as well for Nick over there. So amazing vehicles. These cars are, obviously the toy cars are versions of the bigger cars, and the folks who worked on the bigger cars, it turns out, may have done some helpful advice on how to put the smaller car together. So that might be why, Greg was there. Who knows? But the point is that if you want to see a fun video where, Ghostbusters superfan and independent wrestling superstar Matt Cardona, I guess you could say pro wrestling superstar, but he does a little more independent stuff lately than he does of the bigger stuff. You can go check out this video over on the Hasbro web pages. You can also go and take a look at this over, I'm sure, on Hasbro's Instagram page. I believe there's also potentially the same video on X, and you can probably find it over on Ghostbusters News as well. So these are things that you can watch, and they'll tell you something about the product that you might already know. And I want to say to you that you'll go watch these and find out something brand new, like a new thing that's being teased to you, or another stretch goal, but that's not going to be the case. But you should go check these out anyway, because they're still cool to see, like, what's going on with the vehicle and whether or not, what's inside of it, the reactions of various people who've seen it, and the questions that got asked in the round table. Some of them were insightful in terms of thinking about what this product will look like when it comes to us and lands in our hands. But the biggest thing you can do right now, if you have any interest in this thing, is go spend the money. That way I don't have to come back next week and have a much longer conversation about the HasLab where I'm sad. Which is not a threat, everybody, but it is a thing, look, if it doesn't make it, I'm going to come back and do a post-mortem next week, right? Like, we all know that, right? Okay, so let's see how it goes. I'm crossing my fingers. I have been a little bit more pessimistic in the past week, I admit, about this thing, but, I'm feeling a little jazzed. We just got to 5 digits, and I just found out a few minutes ago, so I'm going to let my heart beat a little faster and hope that this thing actually succeeds. And I hope that we get to have a positive conversation about it next week. If not, I guess we'll have a different one. But we can talk about something else Hasbro's doing, which will be more positive either way, whether this thing gets backed or not, which is that people's 2 in the boxes are now arriving, or at least people who are folks who make content are receiving them. We have not received one here at Extraplasm. You likely have not received one at home, but some of our friends have. Jason Fitzsimmons over at Ghostbusters News has an incredibly in-depth review of the 2 in the box, including some things that I'm pretty sure he figured out that nobody else had talked about yet, as some fun Easter eggs that I don't want to spill for you yet. So you should go check out his video to see what that's about. But I will also tell you that, our friend Nick over at Ecto-1NJ, he got one of these. And one thing you should know is that he's actually giving one away. And the way to get one is that you can either donate, $10 minimum donation to the FDNY, or you can donate that $10 donation to ALS research. And for those of you wondering, like, Jim, isn't ALS the thing your mom has? Yes. Did I coordinate this with Nick? No. In fact, he just told me out of the blue, I'm doing this giveaway, and people can donate either to ALS research or the firefighters at the firehouse. And I said, I would feel weird if you told me that, like, I was my fault that you were doing things for ALS research, because, I wouldn't expect that. And he replied back and said, that's exactly why I did it. So to Nick, thank you. That was incredibly generous and kind to do something really awesome, to try and do something beneficial for, not directly for my family, but for people who are suffering from ALS. That's a very cool cause. And if you want to try and win a 2 in the box and you didn't get one before, you didn't spend the $300 on it, and you feel like, oh man, I should have done that, and you want to do some good at the same time, head over to Ecto-1NJ's Instagram page, or you can go over to their sister page, Gotham Cinema Rides, where the details are present on how you can donate to an organization. Nick's not taking your money, so he's not like running off with it and putting it into the gas tank to drive around the car. But he is going to be taking donations, and he'll be having you essentially send him the receipt from your donation to enter into this giveaway. So this looks amazing. The 2 in the box. I can't wait to get mine. I'm almost a little bummed that I don't have it, because I was hopeful that we would get them before this HasLab campaign that we're currently waiting on ended. That maybe it would have created some momentum for people when they got it and went, man, I'm not backing the Ecto-1, but now I should, because this thing's great. Instead, it looks like we're probably all going to get these after Thanksgiving, which really probably means after the start of December. We're going to get these more in the winter season. And to be fair, winter doesn't start until like December 20th. But we're going to be in the last month of the year before we actually probably receive these, unless you are somebody who already got one because the Hasbro team sent one to you. So if you're Adam Savage, if you're Jason Fitzsimmons, if you're if you're Nick from Ecto-1 and J, if you're Matt from Experience Explorers, then you've got this thing already. And the rest of us are all sitting around waiting to get ours while getting excited. If you want to get more excited in the meantime and sort of wet your palate and get ready for your experience, go check out the video content they're all creating and showing off because they've really done a great job, each of them, of unboxing and illustrating what's going on with this thing. Although I will say, Jason's video is probably the most in-depth, and I know he spent the most time on it because he wanted it to be incredibly good coverage. So go check that out. Moving beyond our mutual anxiety about the Ecto-1 HasLab and our excitement about the potential shipping dates coming soon for our 2 in the boxes, we do have a couple other merchandise things to talk about this week, although there's not a ton that's new to talk about. In fact, one thing we can say is no longer available to you is that if you were looking to buy the 2-pack of Peter Venkman and Sam Hain from Mondo, you can't do that anymore because that closed earlier this week. It was always strange that these two products, the Ecto-1 HasLab and the Mondo figures that were timed for an exclusive timed release, the 2-pack of Sam Hain and Venkman were essentially closing within days of each other. I don't really know who's responsible for that decision, if that's like a Sony Consumer Products division or if that's an independently each of these companies chose to do that. But I kind of wish they didn't, because it probably would have meant that more people could have gotten on board with both of these products as opposed to choose between one or the other. That being said, if you are still interested in getting the Mondo figures and you want to get a Venkman, you still have that option. Venkman is not timed. It's the 2-pack of Sam Hain and Venkman together that is a timed release. So if you still want to grab Venkman and have him coming at the beginning, or not the beginning of next year, but later on in 2025, you can still head over and pre-order that. And that's a thing that's you have the option to grab. You just can no longer get the Sam Hain figure. But in terms of the things you can still get, there's a lot of stuff that's on offer this week because it's Black Friday week. And I say Black Friday week because it used to be that Black Friday was a day, and that was the day that you would put on your body armor and get your mace and your baseball bat and go down to a mall and at big box stores and try and get a cheap television. But now we don't do that so much anymore. Instead, we just act like civilized people, but we do it on the internet for like 2 weeks long and call it Black Friday. So if you haven't seen this already from Ghostbusters News or from Extra Plasma's coverage, where a lot of this started and then Jason built upon it, there's a lot on sale over at Amazon for Black Friday sales for Ghostbusters fans, and some really great discounts. As much as people will say that Amazon does a great job of marking up their prices right before they run a sale, so it looks like they're selling something on sale, but they're not. There's actually some really great discounts happening on several Ghostbusters items. I'm not going to go through the entire list of this stuff because it's so comprehensive. If you go over to Jason Fitzsimmons' website, Ghostbusters News, and take a look at his article, you're going to find there's a ton of stuff. And I counted at one point there were like 63 different items that had some sort of Black Friday sale component going for them that were Ghostbusters themed. But you should know that, like, if you don't have a copy of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire or you want to grab it for somebody else, the 4K and Blu-ray and Steelbook and even the DVD set, they're all like 51 to 43% off or something. So like, actually, 2 of them are 54% off. The Steelbook is 51% off at $27.49. The 4K Ultra HD is $54% off at $22.99. The regular Blu-ray is 54% off at $18.99, and the DVD set is $19.96. So this is kind of a great deal. If you're looking to pick up this film and you want to have a physical copy of it and want to get it for cheap, you can essentially get it for half off at Amazon right now, which is pretty great. I'm not going to lie. It's a pretty good deal. Beyond that, the other big news that I thought was really exciting coming out of Hasbro's, or rather Amazon's announcement, although it happens to be about Hasbro, is that they are offering Hasbro's Ghostbusters Plasma Series 1984 Neutrona Wand for the low price at this point of $94.49. When I first found that it was actually a little more expensive than that. But you can go and grab one of these, including shipping, if you're a Prime member, for $94.49, which is 24% off of the regular retail price of a wand. This is a really great deal. If you were on the fence before about getting a 1984 wand because you said, I already have a Spengler wand, I don't know what I need another wand for, etc., you can go grab this thing for 25% off. And actually, I'm looking at it right now. It's $93.99. It's fluctuated a little bit. Was up at one point around 98, then it dropped to 94. Now it's down to $93.99. So it seems like that price is moving around a little bit, but it's staying relatively low and at 25 to 30% off when you catch it. So these are limited in number. 33% of them have been claimed so far this week, so they will not stay at this price forever. If you are interested in picking up the 1984 classic Neutrona wand that does work with your HasLab Proton pack, despite being a newer product, you can go and grab that now from Amazon. And like I said, it's a really good deal. If you don't have a wand, or if you need a new one, or if you just want to have a backup, and at this point, Neutrona wands are like $130. And to be real, like going into 2025, you're probably not going to see a lot more new production on those, I imagine. Because we're going to see where the Ghostbusters Hasbro license goes, like after this Ecto-1 situation wraps up, I imagine. And we see if we see any more props or anything else, or if it's just kind of going to be towards the end of the line, because it's been almost at this point 4 or 5 years of Ghostbusters being with Hasbro as the master toy licensor. Or licensee rather. So, if I were in the position, if I needed one of these, or I would just kind of wanted one, I would grab it now. I don't think you'll see it this cheap again anytime soon. So, beyond the Neutrona wands that are out there, you should know the Zap and Blast blaster that came out for Frozen Empire is also like half off. You can find it on Amazon. If you would like a Plasma Series 1984 Ecto-1, but to be clear, this is not the HasLab. It's the Plasma Series 118 scale that fits alongside the O-ring figures that were just released. That's marked down for 15% off. So a few different Hasbro items are available on Amazon for pretty cheap if you want to check them out. The other big sort of massive fire sale that seems to be happening over on Amazon for Black Friday sales and just clearance sales is Department 56. Their Ecto-1, I believe, when I saw it, was somewhere in the ballpark of like $29 as opposed to $60 or $70. It's at that point then dropped even lower at some point in the week, and I'm not sure what it's currently selling for, if it's still on the Black Friday deals. But if you head over to Ghostbusters News, you're going to find a comprehensive list of all of the Department 56 stuff, and virtually every single piece from that collection is somewhere between 15 and 60% off, depending upon what it is and who the seller is. So really good deals on that. There's some other things on this list that may interest you if you're a person who got into the EHP lab stuff, the Oxy Shred stuff, the whey protein that had Slimer on the jar. That is significantly discounted over there from 26 to 55% off over on Amazon. And some things like the Rebbit 3D puzzles are on sale. Some Tubbs ducks, etc. So again, I don't want to do the entire list for you, although I kind of feel like I just did by accident. But go over to Ghostbusters News, take a look at what's over there. There's definitely some things I haven't mentioned and some good deals that you can grab on Ghostbusters stuff right now. And one other thing I'll say that I don't think made this list, because it's not a Black Friday sale, although it still is at the same price, is if you are a person who's interested in getting one of the Numbskull 3D Ghostbusters Firehouse sign lamps, that's like a USB powered lamp where you can put batteries in it. It usually retails for about $40. You can find that over on Amazon right now for $23. It's a really good deal. I got one this past week and I'm really happy with what I got. So, but you can go grab that if you're interested in it as well. It's not in the Black Friday sale, but you will probably find a link for it, or at least the listing for it covered on Extra Plasma's websites, or Extra Plasma's social media for sure. Beyond that, Jason Fitzsimmons also has run a great article talking about what fun.com has for offer and Halloween Costumes has for offer, which of course they are sister companies. You can take a look at that article as well. Some really great deals over there in terms of some different Ghostbusters themed costumes and props and things. Particularly some of the better deals over there that I noticed were that the Ghostbusters holiday sweater collection continues to be on sale over there for about 40% off, which is a pretty good deal. The fuzzy hat that they sold over there is going to be marked down to $4.99. That might be interesting to you because they just announced there's going to be some fuzzy sneakers that match it and go with it. So if you want to get the hat on clearance before the sneakers come out, feel free. But, you know, there's some other things in there like costumes for kids, baby carrier costumes that essentially look like you're carrying Stay Puft or Slimer coming out of your belly when you're wearing them. So some fun stuff over there. The Terror Dog costumes on discount for like 50% off. for at least the kids version for sure. I think the adult version of that is 36% off. The Garaka costumes marked down 25% off. So if you want to pick up a costume now for later on in the year, if you know you're going to do cosplay stuff, definitely go take a look at Halloween costumes, because if you know you're going to be doing some stuff out with your franchise or anything else in the coming year where you want some new gear, this is the time apparently to grab it for cheap over at Halloween costumes, because they've got it. Beyond the Black Friday sales, if you're the kind of person who wants to collect high-end statues that will run you well over $500 and cost you more than the Mondo figures or HasLab Ecto-1, since I'm really good at pointing out how much those two things cost, PCS, Premium Collectible Studios, have revealed their 1/4 scale Peter Venkman statue as of last week, and the pre-orders are now open for it. You can go over to their website in order to make orders for this thing. They believe that the retail cost on the regular edition is somewhere in the ballpark of $640, and the deluxe version will cost you $689 for the silver exclusive. That silver exclusive is apparently limited to 150 units and includes both a Proton stream and a unique Slimer statue. If you recall, these 1/4 statues have each come with a Slimer that has some sort of variant difference to it. So head over to Ghostbusters News if you want to take a look at these photos of this or the renders of this before you pre-order, if you are pre-ordering for this. Personally, these are cool. It's really clear that PCS has put a lot of work into trying to nail down likenesses and has revisited these products occasionally after fan responses to improve upon them. But I mean, look, you've heard me talk about how expensive a $200 action figure is, and I really just want Hasbro to take my $400 right now, as opposed to I spend it on a more expensive figurine and start a new collection. So if these are your bag, go check these out. These are probably not so much for me, but that's okay. Not everything has to be, and not everything has to be for everybody. Beyond that, there's not a whole lot to talk about in terms of news this week at Ghostbusters level. Like, there's been a tease of from our folks over at Ilphonics, those people who make that great Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed game that I've spent way too many, thousands of hours in at this point in my life. They have teased the first glimpses of art related to their Boogeyman release. When that's going to happen is not clear, but it should happen by the end of the year. I'm kind of hopeful it's going to happen before Christmas break, that the studio employees will get an opportunity to drop this DLC and then vanish to go be with their families and not have to deal with any of us for a few weeks. But we'll see. By the same token, there's a really good chance that I will be away from my computer during most of the end of December. So part of me is like, drop it next week. I really need to play it before I leave town and go back and see my family. So if that happens and it comes out later, then you'll be hearing from me and my review about that probably in January, to be honest with you, because there's going to be a few weeks where Extraplasm is on the road. It'll probably still happen. You'll probably still get some sort of Christmassy episode or something, and perhaps a New Year's themed episode again, like we did last year, but a little different. But it's probably going to be a different format and a different location than it was last year for sure. So, okay. So I think that we'll put a pin in headlines for this week, although I don't know that we talked about that much, and I may have just rambled at you about how concerned I am about this HasLab. But rest assured, by the time we have another episode of Extraplasm, I won't be talking about whether or not the HasLab made it or not, because we'll know, and then we can react to it however is appropriate. But until then, let's go now to my conversation with Luna X Mars and Charlie Rivera of the NYC and Long Island Ghostbusters, respectively, as we talk a bit about their work on the upcoming Toy Drive Telethon they're going to be hosting, and all the charitable efforts that they're involved in, as well as, our sort of commentary on the Thanksgiving parade and, one of the greatest episodes of Real Ghostbusters ever, Revenge of Murray the Mantis. Joining me on Extraplasm Podcast for the first time ever, but all the way from New York City, even though they didn't really come all the way here, and they're still there, and they're still within New York State, if not within the city, Luna X Mars and Charlie Rivera, Luna from the NYC Ghostbusters and Charlie from the Long Island Ghostbusters. I'm excited to see you both. I want to know how you're doing. Luna, we'll start with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here.
I'm thrilled you're here. I haven't seen you since I was in New York City when you were incredibly kind to me at one point around the premiere by making sure that I didn't get lost in the city because I hadn't been there long enough. And you were like, this is how to get back to your hotel. Here, I'll lead all these people back to Times Square who have no idea where they are.
That's one of my fondest memories is just walking with all of you guys and walking through Times Square and just chit-chatting. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then, of course, we were at the 40th anniversary where you did shoot a little piece of video for Extraplasm and appeared on the Extraplasm Instagram and stuff. So it's nice to see you on screen. I hope I get to see you again in person because it's always fun to hang out with you.
Yes, for sure.
And Charlie, I don't know that you and I have actually met before, but like strangely enough, you've met my family before, which is like weird.
It's weird, or it's kind of glorious. Obviously, coming on Extraplasm, dream come true for any self-respecting owner of a Proton pack. But yeah, we're basically neighbors that were never aware of the other person's existence, which is pretty great. We're basically brothers. Nuts. We're basically a family on this episode of the show.
It's funny to me because you have met my family before me. Like my brother was the person who like met you first. And I think he met you like in the parking lot of the Smith Haven Mall like years ago or something at some event that you all were tabling at. And if it wasn't there, maybe it was in Bayshore, but it was at a mall. It was either the South Shore Mall or something or the Smith Haven Mall.
During the pandemic, the South Shore Mall, we moved Tropicon that year to a parking lot, one of our biggest charity raisers. And from what I remember, your family was very generous with buying nonsense. So I fully appreciate them.
He was very excited because he was like, took photos of you all and like all your stuff. And he was like, do you know these people? And I was like, I mean, I know everybody. And I don't really know everybody. I didn't have a podcast at that point. I was just a fake maniac on the internet. But like, he took photos of it and sent it to me. And the next thing I knew, I got like Long Island Ghostbusters patches in the mail and stuff. And I was like, what is this? This is awesome. And I'm just stoked to finally get to talk to you because as we've talked about in DMs before, like you used to do a charity event, a thing called Spooky Walk at Camp Paquatuck in East Moriches, New York. And Spooky Walk is where I went as a kid. It's like essentially for folks listening at home, it's like imagine a haunted hayride, except it's not. It's like a hayride out to a trail, which then you walk through. And it was like an interactive series of mazes and haunts that existed in a park that serves folks who are developmentally disabled and other programs and stuff that are there and benefits them for years. And so I went there as a child. So when I found out Ghostbusters were doing setups there and like, you know, had proton packs and were crossing the streams out in the woods, I was like, that's amazing. And then I found out that like my brother met those people and I was like, I need to know more. Like, because that's like essentially like you are busting on my home grounds. And I think it's amazing. So I'm so glad the two of you are here and then we're finally sort of getting to do this. And have a good conversation on Extraplasm. And part of the reason I invited you on and wanted you to come on the podcast is because you're both cool people who are from New York's area. And of course, I love talking to folks who are from New York. Like, you know this, like the tri-state area is still my home, even though I live all the way here in California and just keep trying to figure out how to leave. Part of it was because I was like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to talk to people from New York about a potential Real Ghostbusters episode that is about Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving Day parades, because you're already accredited New Yorkers and therefore have more experience with really big Thanksgiving Day parades than anybody else. But most importantly, the two of you are hosting this telethon that is essentially going to be boosting the toy drive effort that many Ghostbusters franchises are having around the country, right?
Yeah, so that's coming up on December 2nd. It's our 4th annual Toy Drive Telethon. We're really excited to do it. It starts at 8 p.m. and it all benefits for us personally, it benefits the South Bronx Toy Drive, which is near and dear to my heart because I'm from the Bronx. But we also interview franchises all across the country, and we highlight their toy drives that they're doing in their communities. And then, of course, we have some really cool people like you who do little shout outs for us. And then me and Charlie have our banter to keep people entertained.
Basically, me and Luna became the unofficial spokespeople of New York City. Last year, we kind of made our relationship with that franchise more formal. We're both recipients of Rookie of the Year for 2023. So not only are we basically internet royalty at this point, but the telethon, absolutely one of the absolute best parts of my year. And like you said so perfectly, it really is to not only showcase New York City Ghostbusters, but every franchise that's doing a toy drive, we want them on the show. You know, New York City does a tremendous job of making it very, very easy to get on. If you head over on social media, you can find the form listed by plenty of people, me and Luna included. And what we get to do is we get to chat with everybody, learn about what everyone has going on for the year, for the toy drive, and obviously celebrate, the South Bronx Toy Drive, huge one for us. Long Island, we're working this year with Kids Need More, which is an absolutely, tremendous charity that doesn't get enough attention. A lot of teams work with Toys for Tots all around the nation. So it's an amazing, amazing day. We basically have a party via the telethon. And this year we got some special incentives planned that are going to hopefully be a lot of fun.
We have 2 other events leading up to the telethon that are toy drives that we're doing too. So is it okay if I talk about those now?
Yeah, of course. Like, and that part of what I was going to say is like that you're doing the digital version of things, right? And that's totally cool. Like, because people can participate in it. And one thing I want to make sure that I hit upon so that we didn't forget to say it is that if people want to register a toy drive, if they want people to know about that effort that's going on, you can still go over to whoyougonacall.org/toy drive. And there's like this listing of all the toy drives that are happening. And you can even send in info about your own and potentially like join in on this effort. But what you were just about to talk about, I think, is more about the physical presence of toy drives in New York at the same time as this is all going on.
Yeah. So tomorrow night, the 21st, which actually I think this podcast is going to come out after, but that's okay. We're still going to talk about it because it's really awesome and I'm excited for it. We're doing our first ever.
You just showed everybody how the sausage is made. We're acting like it's live. Your telethon's live, right? The podcast is not. So one of these events you'll have probably done by the time this thing comes out. But where are you going tomorrow?
Tomorrow we're going to be at Bridge and Tunnel Brewery for trivia night, and we're going to be collecting toys there. That starts at 7 p.m. and very, very excited. This is the first time that we're hosting a trivia night there. And then on November 30th, we have the Big Kahuna. We are doing a toy drive at Ghostbusters HQ, 14 North Moore Street, where it all started. We are having a toy drive at the firehouse, and we are so pumped for that. So that is November 30th from 12 to 4 p.m. So anyone can come and drop off toys and hang out with us and take pictures, and it's going to be a really awesome day.
And I'm just going to throw this out there. It's the 30th that you're talking about doing this, which the podcast is coming out the day before Thanksgiving. And to me, if there's any time to go into New York City, it is Christmas time, right? It is and it is. I'm part of the reason I wanted to talk about, and we're going to get into it in a few minutes. I don't not want to jump into it yet, but part of the reason I thought it would be cool to have you on and talk about an episode of the Real Ghostbusters together, because we're going to talk about Revenge of Murray the Mantis for anybody at home now who's like, what's going on? But part of the reason I wanted to is because to me, and I don't know how you feel about this as 2 people who grew up in New York and have connections to New York City and to Long Island, etc. But for me, the beginning of the holiday season doesn't happen right after Halloween. I know it does now. If you go to a store, it's Halloween is gone and the Christmas trees are up and that's what's but for me, the way the holiday season was structured was Halloween happened, then you had this bit of a break, and then this amazing thing happened, which was that at 7 o'clock in the morning on Thanksgiving, you'd wake up, you'd eat a bunch of breakfast food that you normally couldn't shove in your face, and you would plant your butt on the couch from 8 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock or till noon. And your job as a child was to watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And that was the hallmark thing that indicated the holiday season is here, right? And
let's get this perfectly straight. We live in a society. There are rules, and whether or not people break those rules, I'm not in charge of that, but I am in charge of talking it up for the big man in red. Okay, he shows up at the end of the Macy's Day Parade, and that's when we transition from Thanksgiving and Halloween into the Christmas season. You can decorate your house if you want. I'm not a Grinch. Get your tree up. Start doing your Christmas shopping. I'll give you my Venmo. You can send me a gift. I love money the most. You can do easy. However, the season does not start till Santa, Mrs. Claus, and the elves come on down past Macy's, and that's just a fact.
Yeah, it's established.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that for me, the start of the holiday season is when Santa appears in the parade.
Yeah. And so to me, it's like he's going to show up on Thanksgiving morning. Santa Claus shows up. He goes inside Macy's and then he just plays out like the entirety of like A Miracle on 34th Street. That's how it works. That's the historical document that proves all of this is true, that that's the real Santa Claus that's inside of that particular establishment. And if like people out there, it's great. But if people think I'm crazy, like this is literally the narrative I grew up with. My parents told us for years, like every other Santa Claus in every mall on Long Island was just some quote unquote helper. And the real guy was the guy inside Macy's who showed up at the end of the parade. So that was like the key indicator. It was like, oh, okay, he's on the job. It's time to go to the other room and write the list. Get the Sears wish book and start circling the stuff because it's time. Right. And to me, the circling
for debate.
I don't think it is.
You're not saying anything that isn't just public fact. You think I'm so sorry, society. I'm so sorry, every town in America. You think the real Santa is going to your jabroni-filled mall? Mick Foley, the wrestler, is one of Santa's helpers. We've seen it. We know how the system works. There's one Santa. Macy's parade, that's Santa. The next time he's around is when he's dropping off gifts. Come on, guys, be better. It's a smart crowd listening to this show.
I like this reference to Mick Foley because keep in mind that Mick Foley is also a Long Islander, and thus like he also represents this credential of having to be a New York native in order to understand how Christmas really works and its connections to the Thanksgiving Day parade, which clearly is how everything works now. But like coming back to the point of like being at your charity drive, like if there's a time to go into New York City to begin to experience sort of the holiday season and go do some awesome giving, it's literally like 2 days after Thanksgiving, right? It's like that is the perfect time to go in. Granted, if you want to see the tree lit, you might be a little early because I think it happens like the next week. But I mean, come on, you don't need to go see the big dead tree. It's fine. Like the tree's not important. Of course it's important. But like you get all this other opportunity to go into the city and get the early jump on the holiday season right after that guy just got to Macy's. So you can make a day of it. You could take the LIRR into Penn Station, go see Santa, then leave, then go over to the firehouse, or do it in the other order. Go to the firehouse first, and then on your way home, go see Santa. Either way, like you got the option. And if it were me, if I was still in New York, this is absolutely what I would be doing with my weekend. I already know it.
Well, can I give a tip to anyone listening who may want to go see Santa? You have to make a reservation now. So as it gets closer, it gets harder and harder to get a reservation. And I know this because every year I try to go see Santa in Macy's because to me, that's my my mini pilgrimage in the city. So you got to go online. You got to get a reservation in advance.
That's wild. I didn't know that that's how it worked now, but I will tell you that might actually result in a more efficient Santa system. Let's be just a little bit realistic for a minute. There's actually not just one Santa Claus inside the Macy's. There's like a maze.
Wait, can I tell you something else really cool? You can choose a different kind of Santa.
You're going where I'm going. Because one year, the way they used to do this is that they would try to match families with an ethnically relevant Santa Claus. Like that was part of the way that they would do this is you would come in and they would go, oh, okay, well, you seem to be a family of color, so we can bring you to the Santa Claus of color, because there are like 4 or 5 Santas working at any given point, and they essentially lead you through this winter wonderland maze at Macy's, and then you'd get to the end of it, and you'd think you got to Santa's house at the end of the experience, but they were kind of bringing you into a room, and there were several rooms with several Santas in them, and kids didn't really know. We found this out one year, because we were the white Irish Italian family from Long Island who somehow ended up with the Santa of color. And I was totally fine with this. Like if you look at the family photo of this, I'm like, yeah, fine, let's just go with it. This is awesome. Like the Santa has all kinds of, comes in all colors, all represents all cultures. Today, this is the deal with Santa. My brother and my sister are absolutely puzzled in this photo. They do not know what to make of the circumstances whatsoever. And it has become one of those like things that I hold dear as like a family memory in my life of like, this was New York City at Christmas, right? Like there was this entire thing of like, how do we make Santa Claus relevant to all these different kinds of people in a diverse population in this metropolis full of all these different people? Well, in secret, we'll just have multiple Santa Clauses and the kids won't know. But we got to experience that once.
That had to be before the movie The Santa Claus, though. Because if the movie The Santa Claus was out, it'd be like, old Santa died. Someone grabbed his coat. Louis from down the street grabbed it. Louis from the Boogie Down Bronx is Santa now. This rips.
No, it definitely was. It was before that movie, but it was after Santa Claus, the movie. So I always expected that somehow Dudley Moore was going to show up at the Macy's, like, and with a bunch of candy canes hawking McDonald's and be like, come on, why don't you eat some Big Macs? It's Christmas time. But yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if it's a Long Island thing. I don't know if it's a New York thing. I don't know if it's an East Coast thing, but I've never been under the impression that any Santa I visited was the Santa. Like always, I was like, this is like an elf that got a promotion. He gets to be a fake Santa for his boss. Hey, relay this message for me there, Steve, with the elastic band sticking out from your beard. Let's go. Come on, take my order. I've been real good.
Those guys are part of the Santa Teamsters unit. That's the deal. Like they're union.
I think for me, I mean, you know, when I was a kid, of course, when we would visit Santa, you know, I would think that that's Santa. But as I've gotten older, it hasn't been so much that these aren't the real Santas, but more so that these people embody the spirit of giving. And I know that sounds really corny, but that's still how I see it. Even a mall Santa, I don't look at him and say, oh, that's a fake Santa. He's going to get off at 6 and go grab a beer at the bar. You know, no, when I see him, I see someone embodying the spirit of giving and the spirit of Christmas and the spirit of Santa.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the most beautiful definition of like mall Santas ever. I love that so much. I am stealing that verbatim, and that will be my messaging to every kid I meet for the rest of my life.
Look, they're all union, but they're all compassionate union. That's that's the deal. But they're definitely, you know, there are some OSHA violations that Santas have to watch out for, right? Like falling from large heights, obviously, you know, slippery rooftops, all these kinds of things, kids who accidentally kick you in the nuts.
It's a good union. Any of those Santas that ever fell off a roof, they get taken care of for the foreseeable future. Don't you worry about it. Mrs. Claus saw to that. That's a great lady.
They get full dental and vision. Don't worry.
I now want to go to like the Macy's, and I want there to be like a menu. Like, what type of Santa do you want? Be like, could I get a pretty 30 to 40-year-old Santa lady? Let's get can I consult with Mrs. Claus's like younger sister?
Luna, can you fill us in on this as somebody who frequents the Santa offerings down at the Macy's?
Last I checked, you get 2 options.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Got it.
No Mrs. Claus yet. Not yet.
Sexist.
Can I actually mention that I'm playing Mrs. Claus again this year for the NYPD's PEA toy giveaway, and I'm super excited about that.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. How many times have you done that?
My last year was my first time, and it was pretty awesome. And I think that this might be I said this last year after I did it. I felt like it was my calling, and I really, you know, I've always wanted to work in Disney. I've always wanted to be a Disney princess. And I feel like that ship has sailed. And I got a taste of that in playing Mrs. Claus last year. So it was a lot of fun.
Luna, do they give you like an equally beautiful Santa, though? Like, these are the hot 32-year-old Santa and Mrs. Claus.
I did have one kid question me. Actually, it was a teenager, now that I remember, because the Santa, obviously, he's like, you know, 80s, Classic. And I'm nowhere near that.
Yo, Santa got divorced from his first Mrs. Claus. This is Bethany Claus. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah.
It's funny you said this, though, like about that being your calling in a weird way, because I don't know how the two of you feel about this. And I admittedly, like, I'm going to admit that I have been flight suiting way less. I've actually said to somebody at a certain point this year, I really didn't want to put on a flight suit for something. And they said, "You're not going to wear it?" And I said, I think I'm allowed. Like, I think that I've made enough podcast episodes that it lets me not have to wear a flight suit if I go to something, because like I can just represent the podcast now, and that's okay. But like, to me, the whole idea of putting on a flight suit, and the reason I still do it occasionally, is that sort of idea of not being Santa Claus. Like, I don't like to come out and be like, I'm in a character. I'm being somebody else other than me. Like, oh yeah, I'm Peter Venkman. Look at me. I'm big fat 40-something, doesn't look like Bill Murray, Peter Venkman. Look at me. That doesn't make any sense. But I think for a lot of kids, like, the experience of interacting with different folks, like at conventions and stuff, who are cosplayers, is one thing. But when it comes down to like Ghostbusters who go out to hospitals, who are doing charitable events and stuff, in a weird way, like, you do play this same sort of like fantasy role of like somebody who is makes kids feel safer, helps them deal with scary things, etc. And that there's value to that. Like, it's one of the reasons I've always loved doing that. And even this year, like, the one instance where I was like really bummed out about, like, some people know this, like most people know this, listen to the podcast. My mom is very sick. I'm not having the greatest year given everything that's going on. And I wasn't that energized about decorating my entire house for Halloween. I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I do it every year. I don't know that I really want to do it this year. And it was that energy of the kid who lives across the street from me, who's now like 11, who every year, like, this is the thing he looks for. Like, he's looking out the window to see if I've done it yet. His mom says to me in September, like, hey, yeah, he's waiting. Like, he's wondering.
No.
And it was after we decorated our house and stood outside. And this year I just put on my Ghostbusters jacket and stuff and had my Proton packs out, and we had the 15-foot Stay Puffed Up. And we had families who came down the street who came up to us and said, "Oh, we're so glad you finally put your stuff up. Like, we were waiting." We found out that, like, some of the kids down the street apparently have a seasonal tradition of coming to say goodnight to our ghosts. Like, that they come see our ghosts projected in the window, and before they go to bed at night, part of the routine during the month before Halloween is that the kids are like, "Can we go say goodnight to the ghosts each night?" And at 7:30, they're walking them down the street to come watch the ghosts in our windows and then say goodnight to the... We had no idea, right? But this is all like that fantasy of kids, you know, like, that they have, like, they interact with these characters, and for them, there's something that has more weight to it, in the same sense that, like, wearing a flight suit gown because they got it from Starlight when they're sick is, like, heroic to them. So, like, do you think there's a connection betwing that and, like, this sort of Mrs. Claus thing, that, like, you get to sort of embody a different role model character?
You know, on that note of even Ghostbusters, so, like, obviously I've loved Ghostbusters since I was a kid, but the connection that I have with Ghostbusters is meeting a real Ghostbuster at Universal Studios. That moment, it's that moment of seeing them in real, you know, in real life, that it was like, oh my God, my heroes are here. And I think, you know, I hope that kids think that when they see us as Ghostbusters. And I don't think they're going to think that about Mrs. Claus, but I hope that my presence of just showing them kindness and jolly and cheer for the holiday season, you know, just makes their day a little bit better.
Yeah.
I think it's impossible for it not, Luna. You know, again, getting to do the telethon with you last year, getting to do some events with you, it's just an infectious energy. And I don't know if you experienced this, Luna. Jim, I'm not sure if you ever got to see the Universal show, but after the show, they would always have one or two of the Busters go outside for kids with autograph books. I knew it wasn't Winston. That wasn't the appeal. I was already, like, just old enough to be like, that's not the actor Ernie Hudson. But that guy has a Proton pack. That guy has a flight suit. That guy's suited and booted. And that's why, and you know, in the community as a whole, I know there's some debate about, like, you know, how much of a costume is needed. I've been a big proponent of all you need is a flight suit and good intentions, and you have enough. But the truth is, I really do try to push people in my groups or people who ask me for advice, because I am lucky enough and fortunate enough to go to children's hospitals now. We've built the group to a point where we get invited to some of these really special events. These events that mean the most to me are these, you know, children hospital visits. For me, it is, you know, there is a certain look to a Ghostbuster. You need your flight suit. You need your boots. You need your belt. If you can get a proton pack, you need that. You need your elbow pads. That to me is so much more important than trying to look like, Ernie, Bill, Harold, or Dan. The magic, like you were saying, truly is giving these kids a moment to leave reality a little bit behind, because we're still in a hospital room. Mm-hmm. They're still fighting whatever they're fighting, but they're going to get to spend 10, 15, 20 minutes with a Ghostbuster, and some of them will hold the wand. Some of them are healthy enough to throw on a pack, and we add a little extra weight so they really feel like they're like they're holding a mountain of equipment. Those moments, something like visiting Santa and Mrs. Claus, things like that become, without question, the most valuable thing about this fandom, this community, are those moments. Those immersive moments mean the world to them. And that's why I always say it's like the most selfish thing I do is doing these charity things for others, because I get to witness
You get to fill your tank.
I get to fill that all the way. For a minute, you're a celebrity. Yeah. For a minute, you're the most important person in the room. And so many of these kids I absolutely, love and adore. And I've gotten, unfortunately, they're sometimes fighting some very real things. So you wind up seeing them a few times in the year when we do our visits. And it's always really, really tremendous. It's an honor to even have the opportunity to do something like that.
I think you made a good point in terms of talking about like the way that there's almost a bright line on authenticity. Right. Like, yes, you should certainly dress up however you can and the means you can. But when you can get to that point where you come across as more authentic to somebody and you bridge that almost uncanny valley of fantasy and reality for a kid, it's like, it's what makes something pop. And to make a really deep cut Long Island reference, it's the difference between seeing a like well costumed performer versus seeing people dressed up like Dick Tracy at a Caldor in 1992. Some of you out there are going to get that reference. Some of you are not. But if you got the Dick Tracy Caldor experience on the East Coast, then you got to wait around in line and then meet some people in giant plastic masks where you were like, this is not a person. This is some weird guy in a plastic mask. He must be sweating inside, right? But like, it is this really magical and wonderful thing. And I think that that's what's so cool about the fact that you're doing a toy drive down at the firehouse, right? Is like, these are the Ghostbusters at the firehouse doing a toy drive. So even if kids are coming by, right? Like people are bringing their families by to come do like photos and things of like the firehouse at Christmas time with a bunch of Ghostbusters. They can come and drop off a toy, but the experience for the kids themselves is like, wow, there's a car. Wow, there's a this. Wow, like this is all the stuff that I would ever see. And let's be real. Some of those people, they're also big kids who really want to come by and see that. And that's something that, I think the two of you can probably speak to this, right? Like, as much as I gush about it, I think New York has a really intimate relationship with Ghostbusters. Like, having had 2 opportunities to ride around in the Ecto-1 NJ through New York City and watched everyone in the city, like, just stop. Like, it was the craziest, weirdest thing. I've still said that I watched construction workers and cops who were doing their jobs just go, yeah, I gotta stop working for a minute. And my favorite thing still to this day is like watching a cop who was writing traffic tickets in the middle of it stop writing traffic tickets, like put his tablet down so he could stop looking like he was writing traffic tickets, and then give us a peace sign like, yo. It was like, oh, did we just turn your heart? You're gonna walk away from writing traffic tickets now for people because you saw the Ecto-1? But like, what does that mean to you? Like, do you find that there's like a responsibility you almost have in sort of maintaining the idea or the integrity of what Ghostbusters is because New York has such a relationship with it?
Absolutely. A big part of why I love Ghostbusters is that it's an ode to my city. And I am very proud of my city for all its quirks and for all its bad things. There's so much good and beauty here too. I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say, just that I love my city so much, and I love that it is a character in this movie. It's not just a setting, it's a character itself.
Yeah.
So, of course, when I go out as a New York City Ghostbuster, beyond being on my best behavior, I hope that our actions and our work inspires other people, not just to cosplay, but to do good in their own communities as well.
Batman has Gotham. Superman has Metropolis. Ghostbusters, New York City is where they
Oklahoma.
are. 99% of it. Even Spider-Man goes to space.
That's true. That's fair. I like that. I like that even Spider-Man goes to space. Even the Ghostbusters go to Oklahoma, right? Or Canada standing in as Oklahoma, or London standing in as New York. But like, I mean, that to me is like a good way of putting it. It's like, yeah, the home city of Ghostbusters. You could do anything you want with this narrative from here on out. Like the home city of Ghostbusters will always be New York, right?
It'll always be the beating heart of the franchise. Well, I'm one of the people that hopes they do 100 more movies. I hope we do get the misadventures of the core team in different cities. If they ever wanted to get to a point where they did the franchises, I know 1,000 people have pitched that idea, fan wise, of how great would it be if there was whatever. If a narrative brings it that way, great. There will never be a more iconic headquarters than the firehouse. And that's also in real life. Hook and Ladder now has that sign up year round. That is part of New York City's identity, just as much as the Statue of Liberty. And some people may scoff at that. Those people haven't been to Ghostbusters Day. They haven't seen thousands of people just want to get a shot. When the pride that Luna was talking about being a Ghostbuster in this city, in this state, it's a tremendous responsibility. And Long Island's a lot different than New York City in our form, in our function, in our reach, in our team size. However, even when I'm at, we do a great event, raise a lot of money at something called Moonlight Market. It's an 18 and up event, usually happens at a brewery. So we absolutely don't have the same New York City rules where you'll never see a New York City Ghostbuster in uniform pouring a couple cold ones down. But you will see the Long Island Ghost. If you come to an 18 up event, you will see Ghostbuster Charlie doing shots with everybody. And that responsibility doesn't go away though. There is still that responsibility of making sure that those parents that are out, they're going to get a great picture with the Ghostbuster and that they can show to their kid. You're not going to see a cigar in my hand for an official photo or a fan photo. We might be tucking. Sometimes you get the chest up shot because me and those parents have a couple white wines, out of frame. But no, it's a responsibility that I think all of us welcome. And I think if there are groups out there that don't want that burden, I respect it, but I think they're missing out on some of the real magic of what this hobby can be.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think that what really is valuable about what we do as fans is not just that we spend money on merchandise and like a movie, but that we create a community around it, right? And that's so what I really made me want to sort of have you both on and talk, because I think that what you're about to do with the telethon is almost at this point like a recurring annual celebration of that community, right? Like that you're not just, to be clear, like, yes, I had you on because you are people from New York and because you're the hosts of the telethon, right? But and you're certainly doing this thing at the firehouse, but the toy drive effort that you represent with the telethon is so much larger than any one city. As much as we can be like, New York is the home of ghostbusting, when it comes to being the home of charitable ghostbusting, there is no one city for it, right? And I'm feel bad because I did the podcast last week and I talked about the Toy Drive website and I was like, yeah, I think there's about 30 different Toy Drive things that are set up right now because I looked at it earlier. And then I came back a couple hours later and I was like, oh my God, there's 80 different sites where you could drop off toys at this point in different cities. And originally I was nationwide. And then I was like, wait a minute, now there's Toy Drive locations in Canada. I was so we've literally gone from hey, this started out as an effort that had a few different teams involved in a few different states. And there was a telethon where some of those different franchises came on and introduced themselves a couple of years ago or a year ago and started doing this to, all of a sudden now it's a multinational effort that's all called under one banner, right? And I think I know this. I don't know if everybody knows this, but the first time this happened, it was Ghost Corps kind of was like, hey, we want to put together some toy drives really fast. Like, we got like 2 weeks to like get this done or less. Would you like to host a toy drive in your city and different franchises? Could you get this done? And a bunch of different groups came together to be like, hey, we're going to try and do something in support of this, because Ghost Corps was like, hey, can you kind of host some different toy drives? And it was like kind of oriented around afterlife and stuff, right? Like, so, but this at this point is no longer like Sony leads this effort. This is not like anybody at Ghost Corps is emailing at the beginning of the year and being like, are y'all ready to ramp up? Like, instead, this has become like a fan-led community effort that meets under one banner, and to me is like the greatest illustration of the way that fan franchises collaborate as opposed to compete with each other. Does that make sense? Like, and I wonder how you feel about this, because like, I don't know, like for me, I just see it as that, you know, big community moment for the entire fandom.
Can I tell you a fun story?
Of course.
So I actually joined the New York City Ghostbusters because of the Toy Drive Telethon and because of the Toy Drive itself. So I was solo for many, many years. And I saw that they were doing a telethon, which was not obviously last year because I hosted last year, but the year before that.
Right.
And I thought it was really awesome what they were doing. Of course, enjoyed the telethon, thought it was great. But what really did it for me was a week or two after, they went to Target to go buy the toys with the money that they raised. And that Target happened to be the Target in my neighborhood in the Bronx. And I was shocked because when you think of the New York City Ghostbusters, at least for me at the time, I thought Manhattan, right? I didn't think about the outer boroughs being included. And when I saw them in my own community making a difference, I was like flabbergasted, and I was like, I want to be a part of this. Next year, I want to be with them in Target, helping them buy those toys. And that's when I reached out and was like, hey, how do I join you guys? And then the following year, they asked me to host, which was like a dream come true. I was like, oh my God, yes, this is like the whole reason that I joined you guys.
That's awesome. I love that story. And that's like, and you're not like wrong to think that like from a perceptual standard, right? Like when people say New York, they're like, oh yeah. Like that means like the island, right? You're like, no, that's one borough. Like there's so much around it. And then of course you can fight with people who are like, I live in Queens, it's a borough. And then people from Long Island are like, yeah, it's kind of a borough. You don't have to cross a bridge. So why don't you relax yourself a bit? But realistically, like it's one of those situations where I think you're right. Perceptually, even in the movie, you think about where is the firehouse? It's in Manhattan. Anytime you see ghost busting happen in a movie, it happens on the island of Manhattan. So you might perceive that as like, oh yeah, no, everything must be going on like in Midtown, right? But like the communities that are in need are not at Midtown, like, generally speaking.
I'm not proud, but during Afterlife, when they were driving to the new containment unit, I was like, be on Long Island. Be on Long Island. Come on, legitimize Long Island.
Frozen Empire.
They went far enough out. Yeah, Frozen Empire, yes. They went outside of Manhattan enough, I guess. But, you know, the toy drive and getting to see what this community is really capable of, because I don't think it's a surprise. There have been times where it's felt like this community has nothing but toxicity. We know that's not true because of the circles that we are lucky enough to find ourselves in. We know how much positivity comes out of this community. But from the outside looking in, sometimes it does feel like there's way more, infighting and way more silly nonsense than good. I think what's great about the telethon the last 4 years, it's really been able to showcase the tremendous amount of good that all of us do. We suit and we boot and we some of these smaller franchises or newer franchises, they sometimes reach out for just advice. And I say it to everyone who'll ask, if you get one toy into the hands of a kid that wasn't going to have a toy, you have done a tremendous thing. Yeah. When you get to the point where New York City is buying out the toy section of a Target, when we get to the point where year over year, Long Island has raised more money year over year, every year since 2016 by a considerable margin, 20, 30, 40, 50% more than the year prior. And that's not just us. Seeing what Buffalo does every year, seeing what California does every year, seeing what the guys in Florida do, seeing what all these franchises can do. And now extending out to this year, it feels like there's a lot more information on the virtual toy drive. So literally, if you see a great toy drive, or if you see a toy drive going to something that's a little bit different than what your local toy drives have, I know I've dumped money here, there, and everywhere for some of these virtual toy drives. And it feels great knowing that you can kind of spread that holiday cheer. Even if it's only a couple bucks, it goes a long way.
I think, I'm glad you said this about Buffalo and LA too, or you said California, because I think it the two of you may not know this. People who listen to the podcast likely know this, but at one point in my life, one of the biggest stupid things I ever said on the internet that Dan from Buffalo gets to own forever because I get to be wrong about something and he gets to be right forever is that I was one of those people who was skeptical about things going on in the fandom. And when he originally said hey, let's gather money to buy a Hollywood collectible sign for the firehouse, I was one of those people at the top of the comments going, why are you buying a Hollywood collectible sign for the firehouse as if that's the thing they need? And was kind of an ass about it. And I was proven so 100% wrong about what that small thing did. That small effort to be hey, how do we embrace the firehouse of the fandom that we love and also figure out how to contribute to it to such an extent that being at that 40th anniversary event this year and seeing how many people came out and the record-breaking amount of money that was raised to help firefighters was crazy, right? And then you look at things like what goes on with LA and their engagement with Starlight initially that spreads out to all these other franchises such that anybody could go get a webpage for them. To go, hey, we're going to go and engage in fundraising. I mean, and that even just leads to silly things like the recent collaboration that NYC and LA did over the World Series, which, by the way, I just want the two of you to know, I don't watch baseball, but I watched the World Series, and the reason I did was because I needed to know which of my franchise friends were going to end up winning this little particular competition, and I rooted for the Yankees the whole time. So I walked away very disappointed because my team didn't win, but I represented New York, even though I was here in LA. And then when people started firing off fireworks here after the Dodgers won, I was yelling at them out my front door. But it was either way, my friends, I'm going to have friends who come out of this cross collaborative thing they're doing that's raising money, and it's a good thing. And I don't have to be loyal to one or the other. I can for fun, but I don't have to actually be involved in any sort of real competition so that way I can be happy for the community that I get to be a part of and talk about. And I don't know. I want to say thank you to you for hosting the telethon, but also as representatives of your respective franchises and of this effort. Because it's this thing that we are now watching everybody do each year that comes together, and it's not led by one person; it's led by a whole bunch of people. And certainly Ryan over at NYC gets a lot of credit for running the website and figuring out how to do a lot of coding. And for people who don't know this, Ryan sends me random DMs where he's look what I made it do now, and I'm that's amazing. But so I get to see the pieces of the website as it's coming together. But I'm so impressed by all this. I really am. And it's part of why I was I need to have you on, even if I just to gush at you for 15 minutes straight about how much appreciation I have for what you're doing, because it is to me the culmination at the end of the year each year now that illustrates the creative effort and the charitable power that this fandom can have when we're not just being salty podcasters who are angry about the price of fully articulated action figures. You didn't think I was going to get through an entire episode, everybody, right? Where I didn't reference the highly priced Mondo figures. Anyway, put those under my tree so I don't have to pay for them. But but really, I'm very appreciative of what you do, and I think that it's so powerful. So thank you for doing it.
I think it's a privilege to do this, very much so.
It's absolutely our privilege, and Luna and I spoke about it last year, kind of in the lead up to it. We periodically chat about it now when we're lucky enough to see each other at events. What's really amazing though is I think it also helps put a spotlight on some of the smaller franchises.
Mm-hmm.
Long Island, I think, is the best example, because since 2003, when the Heritos brothers started the Long Island group, they've always done good where they can. And in 2016, when I joined the Long Island Ghostbusters, we decided we were going to go into a very, very heavy charity route, right? I'm not a cosplayer. I'm a Ghostbuster. I don't cosplay. I suit and I boot for good causes. And there are most franchises, I would probably say, are doing it with 2, 3, 4, 5 members like we are. They're doing an incredible amount of good. And I love the telethon because it lets us showcase those groups that maybe don't have a huge following. My group doesn't have a huge social media following. My group isn't great. I'm terrible at social media. Half my stuff.
I don't think that's true at all. You're not terrible at it.
I feel like I'm bad at it. But what's great is the telethon lets every group. You got 2 members, you're a group. You're rocking solo, but doing good, you're a group. And when you look at teams like NYC, Buffalo, LA, these tremendous teams, rather, they're sometimes very obvious in what they do every year. It's sometimes hard to avoid the amazing stuff that they do or the amazing stuff that they can be part of. And your podcast does a great job of kind of showcasing everyone pretty equally. But again, the big fish sometimes get the most attention. The telethon is universal. Right. Everyone gets their slot. You sign up, you're in. Let's hear about what you've done that year. Let's talk about your franchise. That's why I think Luna and I, are so in love with the telethon too, is we get to celebrate as a whole, but we also get to celebrate as a series of satellites, kicking butt in a metaphoric sense, raising money, doing good. It is truly the greatest honor. And to get to talk to some of these people is just an absolute blast. Some of them I consider friends. I talk to them, this will be the second time I ever speak to them this year's telethon, last year's being the first,
One thing I want to make sure we do, that where can people watch the telethon if they're going to watch it and engage it?
Yeah, so you can go to whoyougonacall.org/toy drive, and you can find our YouTube video embedded right there. And I also want to add that Charlie and I think we mentioned this before, but I'm just going to say it again. Charlie and I have some surprises in store for this year's telethon. So it's not going to be the same old your grandmother's telethon. No. We've got some fun stuff planned for this telethon. So definitely tune in because there's going to be things. There's going to be things.
Streams will be crossed. Doors may swing both ways. I don't know if that's true. I'm just putting this out there.
I'm not saying it's going to be heavily inspired by Nickelodeon's Double Dare, but I'm not saying it's not going to be heavily inspired by Nickelodeon's Double Dare. We're going to get Luna in that snot maze. It's going to be great.
Take the metaphysical challenge.
I mean, you said it, not us.
That is a show, though. It's full of slime. So it all dovetails very well.
That's true.
Does this mean that you intend to have a large nose that people will have to pick for prizes? Because that to me is what absolutely makes something Double Dare.
Luna is already building all sorts of stuff for the live donation drives. I don't know if she'll have time to construct a schnoz. Maybe for the 5th year telethon. We'll double back to it. We'll do the Statue of Liberty's nose. We'll really Ghostbuster.
I was going to say Slimer's nose.
Yeah, definitely keep your eyes out for our pictures from the trivia night and from our toy drive at Ghostbusters HQ, because like Charlie mentioned, I am, with help from other people, of course, building something really epic for it, and I can't wait to debut it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've seen a little bit of a tease of this that you've shown me, and I have to say that it is pretty damn cool. I'm pretty impressed by it so far. I'm not going to spill the beans on what it is, but I've seen some pretty cool stuff. So if you got to tune in to find out what it is.
December 2nd, though, that telethon, it's a can't miss event. You're going to see some Busters you've never seen before. You're going to see some Busters that you have seen before that you want to hear more stories from. December 2nd, please join us live. Donate if you can. Again, we think we're going to make it really, really worth it for you this year. But if this episode of this wonderful show has gotten you all geeked up to already start doing some good, already want to start donating, whoyougonacall.org is going to have all the different fundraisers going on, all the different places you can donate toys, all the virtual places you can donate toys. I'd like to get a return on my investment, or at least potentially. So before we get to the kind of main event of today, I do want to remind everybody, Long Island Ghostbusters, LI Ghostbusters, anywhere on social media, we are currently running our Toys for Tots / Kids Need More Toy Drive fundraiser. If you donate $10, we'll take $1. We'll take 50 cents. You could donate anything. But if you donate $10, we're going to send you 2 ultra limited edition stickers, and one person, winner takes all, that donates is going to get the HasLab Proton Pack. They're going to get the Hasbro Neutrino Wand. They're going to get the PKE meter. They're going to get the Ghost Trap. And should it fund, they are also going to get the deluxe version of the Ecto-1 with those Ecto-1A parts. If for some heinous reason the Ecto-1 does not fund on HasLab, we're going to send you the pack, the wand, the PKE, the trap, and I'm just going to Venmo you $400. Come on. Is it not worth gambling this holiday season? 100% of every donation goes directly to our 2 toy drives this year. So you're doing good no matter what. You're getting stickers no matter what. And you may walk away with just a gaggle of prizes.
I liked when you made this post that I laughed as I saw it when you first put out a post about this, because you advertised it as all the HasLabs. I was like, that's amazing. Like, you could win all the HasLabs. I was like, wow, okay. I mean, that's pretty bold, right? Like, all of them? One of them's not even out yet. And that's when I watched your video to be like, how do they handle the fact, like, all the HasLabs? And I watched your video of this and you were like, $400 cash. I'll just give it to you. And I was like, okay, like, seems pretty fair.
I got nothing but contingency plans. One person on a page I posted, or maybe someone reposted my video on like a Hasbro fan page, and they were like, what if I don't want a Proton Pack? What if I want the helicopter? I was like, I'll get you the G.I. Joe helicopter. If you win, I can make magic happen.
You know, I think that some people out there are pretty confident about that thing. You know, I'm still kind of wondering whether or not we're going to do okay with the Ecto-1 HasLab. And I've talked about it last week that I have some concerns about where it's at. Maybe this week it will have reached a better point. Who knows yet? Like, we're recording this in advance, everybody. I don't have the ability to read through time. But there are some people on the internet who are so confident that this is going to fund that they've already begun selling the pack and accessories on eBay. I found listings today that are like, hey, you want to buy a library, lady? And then inside of it, it's like, if it doesn't fund, I'll give you your money back. And I'm like, I don't think you're allowed to do this on eBay. I'm pretty sure that you can't contingently sell things.
I think if it's anything more than 60 days from the shipping date, they can just keep your money.
Yeah.
So, like, be very cautious, my friends. It's a much safer gamble is the Long Island telethon fundraiser, to be honest. You can just win $10, could get you $400 and a bunch of toys. You know what's funny about that, though, is I'm starting to get nervous because it's not at 10,000 yet. It's still in like 9,300 area. And obviously, hopefully it's increased by then. I'm really hoping Big Bad Toy Store was like, we'll take 1,000. Like, that would make me feel a lot more comfortable, because this would be a heartbreak if it doesn't happen. But before we start, I don't think it's on the show. I think it was before we hit record. I know, Jim, you said you wish it was made out of cardboard.
No.
You thought it would fully fund at the same price. They should have just given us a bunch of cardboard figures and like, you're a big fan of cardboard
I don't want recyclable toys.
That's a quote. That's a nice Extraplasm podcast in full support of fully recyclable toys. I get it, man. I don't think it would be worth the $400.
Let me clarify. The only place that a cardboard anything should be allowed anymore in the Ghostbusters universe, as far as I'm concerned, is the unlockable cardboard Proton Pack build in Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. That to me is hilarious because you can literally play with a cardboard box on your back that looks like a child decorated it. But beyond that, like, Look, I will say this. If you decided all of a sudden that you were like, bonus prize, you get a $75 Prime Party cardboard containment unit, I'd be like, you should totally donate to that. That's an awesome cardboard box now. It's a charitable cardboard box. Go for it, baby. But like, please don't make this out of cardboard. Don't trick everybody. Don't be like, hey, you get all the HasLabs, but it's actually the cardboard facsimile that they were using in the video. Like, no. Like, we want Ecto-1s that really roll, everybody. And if you get that joke, because you remember a previous cardboard Ecto-1 that didn't, I hope you appreciate it. Well, this has been fun so far, talking about all that you're going to accomplish, right after the Thanksgiving Day parade takes place a couple days later. But in the universe of the Real Ghostbusters, there was one point where the Thanksgiving Day parade in New York City came under attack. And it actually resulted in what I think is one of the most momentous moments in all of Real Ghostbusters, because it is basically like the day that the Ghostbusters had to unleash a kaiju big battle to make sure that happened to keep the city safe. And so I thought it would be fun for us as a sort of celebration of the Thanksgiving holiday and sort of the turning point from Thanksgiving into the holiday season to go back and take a look at a classic vintage episode of Ghostbusters storytelling and to dig into a little thing called Revenge of Murray the Mantis, which for folks at home may not know, if you don't know this for some reason, is like season 2, episode 52 or something. I'm going to get it probably wrong, of the Real Ghostbusters, and the 65th episode, I think, overall, the entire show, in which, well, we're going to talk about what happens. But needless to say, the Thanksgiving Day parade becomes a pretty pivotal moment in this entire episode. And I thought that the two of you, as people who are experts in New York paranormal stuff, I mean, Charlie, you and I both grew up in the shadows of Brookhaven National Lab, and it's various conspiracy theories. So I know that you and I definitely have some experience with it. And we grew up in the same time as everybody decided to go to the Montauk Project and go out to the East End and start talking about that, which is, of course, like, if you don't know, people at home, is the thing that inspired Stranger Things very clearly. So there's a lot of paranormal stuff we've already had some experiences with that I thought would give us some insights on how to tackle a potentially haunted Thanksgiving experience in New York City. So would you like to dig into Murray the Mantis a bit and offer up some commentary on it for folks?
Can I confess something to you really quick?
Yes.
I have never watched a full episode of The Real Ghostbusters, and
You're fired.
I saved that to have that reaction. I saved that to tell you guys now. I've seen clips, and I've probably...
I got something to do on December 2nd. I don't know if I can co-host with this woman.
I probably saw it as a kid, watched it here and there, but yeah, I don't really remember it. So I'm excited to do this with you guys.
So this is going to be new for you. That's exciting. Yeah. You get a new Ghostbusters story today, which most of us are, we don't have any of those left. So enjoy it while you can. Should we get into it?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
If you're watching at home and you want to sort of play along as we're going to talk about Revenge of Murray the Mantis from the Real Ghostbusters cartoon series, then you're going to want to go ahead and load up that episode now and cue it up to literally the first frame of when you watch Mowgli begin stomping down the street, which is, I can't tell you a time code. And the reason I'm going to tell you to cue it up to that rather than a time code is that some of you may be watching on YouTube, some of you may be watching on Amazon, some of you may be watching on the original Time Life discs. Some of you are probably wild enough to have this on VHS and have a 3x4 or 4x3 television somewhere. And you're like, I need the authentic experience. I'm not watching this in
That's
digital.
how I'm firing it up.
So
I just had to rewind past Drool of the Dog-Faced Goblin and Ghostbuster of the Year, which Ghostbuster of the Year, one of my favorite episodes. So yeah, man, my yellow VHS copy is fired up. Let's go.
All right. Well, I just want to say, I want to make sure, as a former child employee of a video store, were you kind?
Oh, I always rewind, baby. I rewind DVDs. That's the sort of gentleman you're dealing with.
Thank you for being old enough to get that joke. I appreciate you, Charlie. That's...
I'm a proper 90s kid, which is like a polite way to say I'm 40.
Yeah. That's this is like people say, oh, you're like an 80s kid. And I'm like, yeah, that means I'm well into my middle age. Thank you very much. Like, yeah, that basically means I'm on my borderline to arthritis. Thanks for pointing it out. You know how much gray hair I have? Thank you. But yeah.
I'm a Virgo, so I always rewound.
Nice.
All right. Well, whether you're watching it rewound or whether you're scrubbing through it digitally or loading up a particular chapter on a DVD, let's get into The Real Ghostbusters, The Revenge of Murray the Mantis. Count it down with me at home if you're listening. We're going to hit play in 3, 2, 1, play. And, of course, every Real Ghostbusters episode begins with the stomping feet of Moogly walking down the street. If you're a fan of a particular toy line that I really appreciate and know the people who made, you might even call him Struttin' Moogs. Which, shout out to Phantasm Toys.
Is there a more beautiful cartoon woman than Janine in early Ghostbusters episodes? My God, what a snack. What a snack.
I'm not going to pretend that I don't think Janine Melnitz influenced my interest in short-haired women who had nerdy librarian glasses and were into alternative punk music. I think that's probably Janine Melnitz's fault. And I do think that is the first 2 seasons of Janine. The reinvention of Janine and the departure of Laura Summer from this role, I was not so keen on new Janine. So yeah, not so keen on new Janine. That's my new pop song I'm going to write.
Every now and then I'll do an event alone. And I have special art that says Charlie and the Long Island Ghostbusters. Because when I'm alone, it's basically a bad episode of Real Ghostbusters. So
it's so odd to encounter the title cards. The transitions.
Is this the best cartoon music?
Yes. This is great music.
Has to be up there.
I wish we had an official soundtrack album of this. There are some versions out there that you can find over on Spook Central. I know you can get a lot of the MP3s, but
yeah. So
this is interesting, right? They've built an airlock on the containment unit, which if you remember earlier in the episodes of this, Egon made a suit so he could go inside the containment unit because he had to save the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. And now he's like, well, maybe we'll just put a door on it.
I mean, it was smart. He was setting it up for his granddaughter.
And of course, they send Slimer in as their test subject.
Well, he doesn't pay rent.
No, in fact, at some point later on in this episode, we're going to see that they have to get him to go back in to go do things. And Peter has to make a business deal with him.
Yeah.
To get him to go.
Ray, we know that Ray has the best snacks in the house. As a chubby brother, come on. Why are you giving him Pete's snacks?
I want to know why Venkman is hiding a box of jelly beans under his pillow.
The same reason my brother hides snacks from me. It's to help me.
Oh, he's got to get a woman? Even in the cartoon.
I gotta tell you, I was not a confident kid. I just stole Peter Venkman's cartoon swagger. The monster I am is because of this cartoon.
Again, with the jelly beans. This is a recurring theme throughout this entire episode of Venkman's jelly beans. And I don't... to me, I'm jelly beans aren't even a thing I think about buying unless it's Easter.
Oh, see, again, were you, never chubby? Because I'll mess up a jelly bean any time of year.
I was going to say, I have jelly beans in my candy drawer right now.
So I have to ask you, have either of you ever actually been to the New York City Macy's Day Parade?
No, because it requires you, at least for me, requires you to get up super early in the morning. And, my family is usually busy getting ready for Thanksgiving, so we've never really had the chance. It is my dream to go and watch it in person. Every year I say I'm going to try to go, and I never do. And for me, it is a sign of success in life to be in the parade. So my dream is, as an entertainer, to be in the parade. If I am on the float waving, I've made it in life and I am good. I can stop right there.
I would like to yes end Luna's answer. I have not been to the parade, but I do periodically email Ghost Corps. Ghostbusters at the Macy's Day Parade with like 100 of us marching behind New Jersey's Ecto or one of the real legit movie Ectos. Like, how have we not done that yet?
It would be amazing.
Yeah.
But I think it's funny because most New Yorkers have an emotional attachment to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, but also most New Yorkers are like, I have no desire to go to that thing at all.
Yeah.
And the thing that's more exciting is the actual like balloon inflation stuff. Like the night before, like, look, it's preview night. And they fill up all the balloons. Mm-hmm. And so in this case, we kind of crossed over it. But like what just happened was that the balloon was being filled inside of a warehouse that used to be a public morgue.
As one does.
What they describe in this episode as the death force, some of the death force that apparently exists under every morgue, came out and funneled its way into Murray the Mantis, right? So we're going to talk about this more, I think, because this is, I think, maybe the first Ghostbusters canon explanation that there is a death force that exists out there underneath places where people had dead bodies before.
I just like that Egon is like a big Murray the Mantis fan, which like Murray the Mantis is clearly Mickey, right? So like, I think canonically Egon's just like, oh, Mickey Mouse.
And they are like, he and Ray talk about this, that like this is a hit character from Saturday morning cartoons who fights off things like the Hypno Snake. Yes. Like, so like it is straight up like Kermit the Frog is what I think of when I see him, because
Kermit's
the Kermit the Frog balloon has like the same pose, right? Like it's kind of got the same legs and arms out, and it's almost like the same kind of balloon like as him. And even Murray the Mantis only has 4 legs. He should have 6. Yeah. Right. So I'm like, I kind of feel like he's a knockoff of the Kermit balloon, which is very that period of time, you know?
The 2 fakest things about this episode, how small the crowd is, because the crowd would be triple that size. And also Egon wearing his Proton pack in the passenger seat of a Cadillac. That's not happening.
I'm going to say number 3, that none of these balloons have taken down a light pole yet and knocked anyone unconscious. Because that's got to be a hallmark. It's one of the reasons to watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade is to see, will there be balloon catastrophe this year? I did appreciate that they decided to draw all of these people who are the balloon handlers in the same costumes as a character from the show, because that's exactly how they do it in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, is that all the balloon handlers wear the same costume that is some other character from whatever it is they're handling.
And I love it that it's like clearly a female character that they're all playing, but some people have mustaches. It's great.
Yeah, they're in drag.
They were like a very, very early adapter of like anyone can play the part.
I have to say, I really love her sweater.
She's great. She's another snack, man. Those giant shoulder pads.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just shoot the balloon. It's fine. I love how proton packs can solve every problem.
Peter won't do for a pretty lady batting her eyes.
Remember when we were watching Ghostbusters Frozen Empire in our respective homes and theaters, and they were like thinking at home, you're sitting there thinking, wow, it's kind of like a Real Ghostbusters episode. And what do you know? Venkman shows up and goes, just use the proton packs again. Which is like, how many times they say in that movie, yeah, the proton packs don't work. And he's like, well, let's shoot them anyway. So now he's gone from balloon to corporeal, like, ghost.
Yeah.
Which to me is kind of like, you know, he went from being a Mattel version of the Stay Puft to, or a 2016 version of Stay Puft to a corporeal version of him. I don't know.
All I know is Egon's childhood, he had no luck. He had a straightened half of a slinky. His favorite cartoon is trying to murder him.
He's haunted throughout his adulthood by his childhood fear of the boogeyman.
Just brutal.
She's the exposition here. She's both the love interest for Peter and the woman who's got the exposition of like, yeah, by the way, we filled the balloons in a morgue for some reason.
What a creep. God bless him.
Did he smell her hair?
Yeah. He did.
Real deep too. That was very uncomfortable for everybody.
He smelled her hair and looked in her eyes and pointed out that there were some good things about the situation they were in, riding on top of the car from a giant, huge monster that's trying to kill them.
I also kind of love that this show did a great job of always including Janine. Like, if they were going to be in the Macy's Day Parade, Janine's like, I'm going. Like, that seems like so much fun.
I like the idea that Ray is just like, hi, I'm laying on top of the car. The car's doing 55 miles an hour.
He has an 85-pound backpack on, and he's just hanging out upside down. Yes! Movie reference for the win. The best episode.
It's not the only one. It's not the only one. He's going to calculate. Egon's going to calculate the power of Murray the Mantis in this episode, and it's one of the few references in the show to Gozer. Like that, he essentially says that Murray the Mantis is just as powerful as Gozer is, and that's kind of like a crazy thing to consider, that they inflated some balloons inside of a morgue, and they accidentally created something as powerful as, are you a god?
Well, speak a New York City morgue. That's a lot of bad juju. That's like you could rival that prehistoric monster. Now, if they drew Murray with a flat top, that's how you become an icon.
Hey, did you know that Egon was an early adopter of RGB stuff in his computer? He's like a gamer. He has all this like glowing little keyboard with his little RGB lights.
Nerd. I also like that he only uses the top bar. He doesn't actually use any of the keys. He's doing all math.
The techno babble here is great.
Venkman is for the people and ghosts.
He says that the energy level is 45 megawatts times 10 to the 14th power. What is that supposed to mean to you as a child? Like, I love some of this dialogue because it's like, unless you're a mathematician, like, what are you supposed to do with that?
As a kid, I was like, yep, technobabble, sold.
Yep. Ghosts are powered in megawatts, just like cars are powered in gigawatts, and that's how you go back in time.
Dude, Slimer does not care. He's like, let the city burn.
Here's what I appreciate about this episode.
Oh my god. Maybe that's why he's my favorite. I must have been watching this. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, he's the best. Until he gets his own show. Once it becomes his show, it's not. Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters is nothing compared to the Real Ghostbusters. I'll say that on the record.
I feel like it's the first, 70 episodes are just awesome. It's a good run. A good run.
Seasons 1 and 2.
What would they have to give you to convince you to go into that containment unit, Jim?
Well, he just offered him a Diners Club card on top of everything else. He was like, I'll get you a crate of donuts. I'll get you all this other stuff. And he's like, I'll get you a Diners Club card. And it's like, wow, I'm going to give you a credit card that lets you go to airport lounges. What a deal, Slimer.
I got to tell you, pretty sure it's a lie. I'm pretty sure Peter's just like, maybe going to get him 6 donuts and call it a day.
All right, so these, first of all, I would need far more than a Diners Club card to go inside the containment unit, but one thing I would definitely want is rock climbing equipment, because we've already covered that basically the containment unit is just a bunch of floating rocks inside. It's a little different than saying, I've seen you on television, you have to have a writ or a warrant or something. She's like, can I just bring them in the house? Why not?
Yeah,
this is also a great scene. Because this is the moment that's kind of like in a weird way going to call back to the original Ghostbusters movie, as the cops come in while they're doing something with the containment unit, and he literally says, "Let's go again."
No, let's go. Egghead. He called him Egghead.
Oh, you say Egghead? Sorry.
Yeah. He's like, look at you with your glasses and your math.
I want to do the remastered version of this where we just redraw all the cops who all look alike to all look like Joe Cirillo. So they're all pencil neck cop. if Chris Sorrentino is listening out there, sir, that is your next project. You need to draw that.
Just an army of them.
Shout out to Chris Sorrentino, aka Pizza Plasm of the NYC Ghostbusters.
You hate to see it. A brand new playset we got robbed of because of the NYPD. Poor roof.
I mean, essentially they decide to blow the containment unit on purpose, right? And the reason why is, like, if you really get down to what they did here, Egon was like, okay, we've calculated that Murray the Mantis has the same megawatts and power in terms of his life force, is how they describes it. He says life force or life energy as Gozer. So they go in the containment unit and they get the manifestation of Gozer. As much as they're like, this is Mr. Stay Puft for the entire episode, I think the three of us would agree that Mr. Stay Puft is a form of the Destructor and is a particular form of Gozer.
So for me, what Afterlife kind of explained was that Gozer, there's like a cost to Gozer having manifestations. So for me, that was kind of the cool thing, is that like Stay Puft could, again, now Stay Puft is kind of his little buddies, which is why the mini puffs are still around. I don't think that that's necessarily reabsorbable. So I think it's actually like genuinely kind of interesting, the idea that like, yeah, man, if you put all the mini puffs together, you could probably get a new big Stay Puft, but they can't get along long enough to rejoin.
Well, that's what's funny, is that when he comes out of the building, the cops are like, isn't this like the bad thing that destroyed the city? And Peter goes, yeah, but we think he's all better now. Which makes me wonder, like, is there a rehab center inside the containment unit we don't know about? Like,
you know what happened?
Is there job training? Like,
they got him a date. Peter was right. Sailor just needed a date. What'd you say, Luna? We missed you.
No, I didn't say anything. I'm just loving all of this.
I just love that the writers of this episode was like, who's seen Godzilla?
Yeah, I mean, it is straight up, like, it goes from being a Ghostbusters episode to straight up a kaiju big battle. Like, they're gonna just unleash two giant monsters on the city and hope theirs wins. And they can sort of like team up and help him win.
The best, I mean, the Ecto-1, in my opinion, the Ecto-1A is the greatest Ghostbuster vehicle. Then it's the motorcycle helicopter hybrid. Oh, look at this thing.
There it is. You get your Ecto-2 now.
There's always talk that Hasbro maybe doesn't love the cost of the Ghostbuster license. As much as it would kill me and my wallet, do you imagine if NECA got the Real Ghostbuster toy license and was able to do stuff like the 2-seat helicopter? I would throw money at them.
I'm just going to say that I want the RoboSyn version of this that like is the 600. As much people are like, I don't want to spend a lot of money on things. Let me be just a complete luxury person and say, I want toys that transform and operate on their own. So give me an RC version of this. Give me a drone I can buy.
I would immediately
not from,
crash it.
DJI.
Is the only problem.
I also love this idea that Slimer is essentially coaching the most powerful thing in the containment unit, right? Like he went and got the most powerful thing they've ever caught. And he's like, come on, big guy.
Slimer is his Mickey and Stay Puft is Rocky. I didn't hear no bell. Murray the Mantis. Murray
this is interference, man. This is cheating.
Furious that it's a tag team match and he's partnerless.
Somebody make this as a 2-pack. I want this as a 2-pack of figures.
Yeah.
You want an excuse to re-release a big Stay Puft, him versus Murray?
Yeah. With a pack in little Coach Slimer.
Stay Puft is not like he's not bleeding marshmallow and he's not full of air. He's getting cut and like nothing's happening.
Oh, I mean, I guess his marshmallow's stable enough. This seems safe. No protective eyewear. Just shoot the glass.
Yeah, it's funny. They almost wanted Stay Puft to look like a helium balloon. which ironically in 2016 they do.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you think about it, like, if you cut a marshmallow, it doesn't necessarily leak, right? But you would think maybe he starts to lose some structural integrity and gets to topple over or something. But I mean, he's faring better in this fight than he did in the 84 movie. He was on fire by now in the 84 movie.
Yeah.
I also love the like fun way that they hold the neutrino wands. Like if you look every now and then in a cartoon, they hold it like a sniper rifle. Like their right elbow goes super high. They're like, I'm going to look down the sights of my laser gun. Bro, the Ghostbusters are sexy as hell, huh? Look at these studs. How hard it is to pull off powder blue for a jumpsuit.
Like, there's so many opportunities for weird variant action figures from this episode. You have like Slimer when he's wearing the functional air traffic controller helmet and taking orders. You have like the guys who've gotten off the Ecto-2 who are wearing helmets.
I wonder, like, I just feel like if they had a way to make these toys like $20, I would have so many dumb variants. Like, there's something about that $25, $30 price point that I'm like, nah, too rich for my blood. $20 though? I'll take Helmet Peter, Helmetless Peter, going on a date Peter. I'll take them all.
This is great. This guy shows up now who was going to arrest them all earlier. And he's like, I don't know what you're doing. The two of you are talking, but we got to get this parade underway.
Also, canonically, how long do you think that whole thing took? 2 hours at least?
At least.
Macy's Thanksgiving parade paused for 2 hours. They're like, all these people didn't go home, do some math, and fight this thing.
Well, if you showed up at 3 o'clock in the morning so that you could be next to a blue barricade and watch a bunch of marching bands go past you, would you give up that spot just because some terrible haunted thing showed up?
You bring up a good point. Yay.
He is a balloon now. How does that function?
Oh,
yes, he's just
Superman.
It ends with him essentially becoming a balloon.
It's one of his many superpowers.
Of course, the one thing they didn't give us
every show.
I didn't know he had a voice.
Back at the parade,
that's so cool.
You didn't know he had a voice, the Moogly?
No, that's awesome. Yeah.
I feel funny that, like, Luna, this is your first, like, full-on Real Ghostbusters experience of learning that, like, yeah, Moogly's got a voice, and he would introduce you to the commercial breaks, and we now return to the Real Ghostbusters.
I feel like Luna's about to go on a 70-episode binge because as a little kid, I would always laugh at the Deke when that popped up from a very young age. I was like, that's almost a dirty word.
Well, and when we were kids, they used to actually say it. There was a kid who went Deke when they put the logo up on the screen.
What a tremendous episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's a short little snackable thing. It's not like doing a commentary on a whole movie, but like, I love that there's like these little elements of the 84 movie that get called back in this episode that like don't get called back in a lot of Real Ghostbusters. Like, Real Ghostbusters episodes don't really like ride the line too closely of like going into the original movie. It's like kind of the thing where it's like the first season has some references to it, but a lot of it splits away from it. And here you are like in the middle of New York City with the second appearance by Stay Puft, but in this case, he's brought in as like the hired gun. Like they were like, we need a ringer.
I still to this as a full grown man, quickly approaching being 40. The reference to the film in that episode just now filled my heart like I was the Grinch. It has grown 3 sizes. I'm going to double my donations to everyone this year. There's something about it that's just so evergreen. You know, the one thing I will say, because I'm nothing if not going to always be a cheap self-promoter, if people really dug this, I think the 3 of us, we start at the beginning, and once a month, let's go through all of the episodes. If people like it, I'm going to force myself and Luna onto this wonderful program. Just show up every few episodes to be like, and now we're going to watch episode 3.
It would, it would be kind of fun to do that. It would be almost like the like noobs react video alongside like, you know, the old people who see it. And I can't remember what this trend is called because I'm too old, but I know what I'm talking about. And the two of you do where it's like
a react video.
Yeah, the react where you like show something old to like old tech reveals that you show to teenagers who are like, what is this rotary phone? Luna, you have to play the part of the teenager in this role. And then we can be the two old people.
Sony loves their re-releases, right? We have the Time Life box set. It's tremendous. There's the box set on Amazon. That's okay, obviously. But I think we do another super high quality re-release of the DVDs. And one of the extra features can be like Luna Mars watches the Real Ghostbuster for the first time with her buddies.
I would love that.
What did you think of that as the sort of first full experience of the Real Ghostbusters?
Honestly, I think you picked the perfect episode because it piqued so many of my interests. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, Stay Puft is in it, and just how kind of silly and fun it is. I absolutely loved it. That was great. I'm really sad I haven't watched it sooner because, my goodness, that was so entertaining.
You are going to end up like binging this. This is what's going to happen now. You're going to go find it. And to be fair, like if you just want to watch the first season and try it, the first season's only 13 episodes, Real Ghostbusters. And the second season has way more episodes in it. But like the first season was just 13 episodes. And the last of those episodes, I'm pretty sure, is Xmas Marks the Spot, which is the actual Christmas episode, which for folks who've listened to this, if you were like, hey, that was kind of fun. If you don't know it, there is actually a commentary that Extraplasm did of Xmas Marks the Spot with Chris Stewart from the Crossrip. That we did a couple at this point, a year or 2 years ago. It's really kind of fun. But like, I love going back to these episodes because they kind of reveal like where we've been as fans, like as little kids, you know, and to fall back into that role of like watching this as an audience member. Like to be fair, I watched the episode before we got on this because I wanted to refresh my memory of it before we talked about it. But like, to go back to something this old that I haven't seen in many years and sort of reconnect with why I loved this cartoon as a kid, I was like, this is why. Because like, even though I was a person who saw the movie first, occasionally this was a show that would go, yeah, they look different. All the guys look different. They're all their own kind of versions of these characters. This isn't Harold Ramis as your Egon. This is Maurice LaMarche. And you don't even know that because you're a child and none of the voice actors have names when you're a kid. But like, there's these moments where they still do these callbacks to things like, hey, let's talk about the power rating of Gozer versus the power rating of Murray the Mantis, you know? But I'm still going to say, I'm really afraid that there's more Death Force energy like under New York City that is going to rival the power of Gozer. Like, what happens if they go over like on Long Island and they just like accidentally get the Death Force energy from Calverton National Cemetery? It just
they're going to
seems problematic. Yeah, that's for sure. You can go. I'm not going. I'm going to be honest. But I don't know. I thought this was really fun. I think it's a really cool episode. Any other comments about sort of Real Ghostbusters or anything else?
I mean, you saw I didn't speak much because I was absolutely mesmerized by what I was watching.
I mean, for me, it's always been my default answer to what my favorite Ghostbusters film is. I always cheat because to me, the first couple seasons of Real Ghostbusters, that's what made me love this, you know, so completely. That sort of access, that Saturday morning feeling of a new or an old episode of Real Ghostbusters, it didn't matter. That's what really had that fire be so tremendous. And I sometimes think that's why people who like really don't like Ghostbusters 2, I think they just were that group that didn't really dig the cartoon. Because Ghostbusters 2 is that perfect hybrid. The first Ghostbusters, obviously quality-wise, the best film, the best script. But there is something about the kind of more is more. I do not know that there would be as many franchises as there are without the Real Ghostbusters making it so accessible, getting those toys in our hand. With the Netflix animated series Around the Bend, I really hope they took that time to look at what made the Real Ghostbusters for a while such premier entertainment. And what's great about that particular episode, it really shows you that they weren't nearly as money hungry as I think sometimes people accuse the line, because they never made a containment unit playset. They never made an accessory pack If think about the stuff He-Man would sell kids as like a second tier pack. You could have done that with Ghostbusters. You could have done endless little crummy plastic hollow ghosts. You could have done Murray the Mantis 2-pack.
You just made me think of Weapons Pack.
Which I would have loved, because I broke the stream on purpose off of my blasters because it's on their back. Like, it's not always shooting. That's stupid. I wish I had, from childhood, a set that was scissored. I would go running up to my dad or my mom or my brother and be like, "You trim this for me? Because this is inaccurate to my imagination."
Deep Cuts Masters of the Universe fans out there will remember that Weapons Pack was literally a bunch of accessories that came with other figures just in different colorways. Yeah. So if you wanted an axe that didn't match any of the other parts of another figure, here you go. And it was essentially like, did you lose stuff? Cool, buy this stuff, because you're complaining to your parents that your shit is lost. But
could you have imagined though if they did like an equipment pack and they gave you ghost traps? Like the Real Ghostbuster line didn't have ghost traps. They could have justified all sorts of little gadgets from the show. You could add I know that like Egon's lab wound up unproduced, but you could have really milked it. And I hope Netflix does. Give me stuff at the $13 price point. I'll buy all that nonsense.
Yeah, I'm eager to see what the new cartoon's going to look like, and I don't know what connection it's going to have to Real Ghostbusters at all, but if any. But I think that you sort of hit a point where you said this idea that the cartoon is essential for many people because it's what allowed them to access Ghostbusters. I mean, I saw the movie when I was 4. I won't pretend I didn't. I loved it, and I was terrified of the fridge. Yeah, well, my parents were more like 19 and 20 when they had me, and they were like, well, what we'll do is we'll put him in the car, him and the other one, and we'll get some KFC, and we'll drive him down to the drive-in for a double feature. We'll feed him enough fried chicken, and they'll just pass out in a pile of blankets, except I've been an insomniac since I was born, so that doesn't work for me. That's why I remember seeing Die Hard when I was like 6, too. I have such great taste in movies from my childhood, but like Ghostbusters was my first like cinematic experience that I remember from beginning to end.
Wow.
But to be real, like, I didn't dress up as Harold Ramis on Halloween when I was 9. I dressed up like Egon Spengler in a ridiculous long blonde wig that dangled in my face in the rain. But like, that is because Real Ghostbusters gave you the opportunity to access play, right? Like, that's what it allowed you to do, is that there's cosplay for adults when you think about it now, and we use that word, right? But like this idea of being able to dress up as a character, to carry a proton pack that had a big foam noodle on the end of it, any of those things that you could do with the Real Ghostbusters toys they made is what gave us our first experiences as playing as Ghostbusters, right? So of course now you have people in their 30s and their 40s for whom this is like a foundational thing, because it essentially set the blueprints for what it meant to play as a Ghostbuster.
I was a chubby kid though. I was not even cosplaying back then. I was always the rookie. I was like, they hired me on board, baby. Let's go. There's enough room in that Ecto. Janine got to stay behind because I'm taking the extra seat up front.
What I think is weird is that I know a lot of folks who are heavier guys when they were kids. They identified with Ray because they were like, he's the heavier one. He's like me.
Up. Poor Dan.
I chose Egon. I chose the person who looks the least like me ever. I mean, he's blonde, he's thin, he's tall. I'm none of these things. But for whatever reason, when I went, what Ghostbuster do I want to be most like? It was like, oh, I love that there's this really smart guy. Like, I just love that he's like the science guy and he has like all this smart sciencey answers. And that's so cool. Like, Venkman's there because he's like, comic relief in a weird way. Like, him and Slimer together serve a comic relief role in many capacities. And it's Egon in this narrative and sometimes Ray alongside him, who kind of come up with the ways to solve all the problems. And I think it was one of those things that drove me as a kid, even into my adulthood, to be like, hey, I want to go into IT support and things because I can solve problems, like based off of understanding the science and the rules of how things work. And eventually I left that and decided to go teach argumentation instead. But like, the point is that like, I think that there's a lot of us who, even if you identify more with the movies than you do with the cartoons at this point in your life, this was something that showed you how to be part of this community, this activity, and sort of how to engage and play with other people, and set up a lot of folks for what they do now in a weird way. Those of us who like to go out in flight suit, learn to do it here, except Luna, apparently.
Well, what you guys were just talking about made me realize something about gender norms in the 80s, because you guys talk about growing up with the toys, but I didn't. And I don't think it's because I didn't watch the cartoons, really. I think it's really just because Ghostbusters was probably mostly seen as a boys thing, So I don't think it really occurred to my parents or anyone else in my family that I might want a Proton pack and I might want the car and I might want to play with those things. So I think that's what really drew me to cosplaying as a Ghostbuster in the beginning, because it was like, oh, I'm allowed to do this. I can do this. I can be a Ghostbuster. And it never occurred to me before that. And I do think it's probably because I missed out a lot on playing with the toys growing up. So I do envy you. That's
really fair, Luna.
In that sense.
I'm glad you said that. Like, I'm glad you offered that perspective, because I think you're right about that. Like, that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important that we recognize now that, like, when you consider how you set up inclusivity and accessibility in Ghostbusters stuff, like, whether you like the 2016 movie or not, or like whether you think that like the current crop of movies fit your cup or are your cup of tea because of who the principal characters are in them, leave all of that aside. And to be clear, like, I have no like particular things against either of those things. I love the new movies and I'm fine with the 2016 movie existing and it's sort of the way it does, and people who identify with it, great. But like, to me, the idea that Ghostbusters as a fandom, as we know it, has sort of broadened out such that we are trying to be more inclusive and we are trying to say like more people should be able to come and do this, is so important for like the fact that, there's lots of people who never had that experience. And like the ability to go, I liked this movie as a kid, but nobody gave me the opportunity to engage it, is a really important thing to identify and almost to rectify, to be the people who can go, we're in our 30s and 40s now. So how do you make the things that you didn't have opportunities to do when you were a kid be an opportunity for somebody else to do? Right. And I'm glad you said that. That's a really important point.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, again, I was fortunate enough that it was very accessible to me. It was very much a boy's toy line, right? But I was already out of my cartoon phase when Extreme Ghostbusters came around, and then one of the Ghostbusters' name was Eduardo Rivera. I cannot tell you my brain exploded. And Rivera is like Smith, right? Rivera is a very common Latin last name, but for me, I was like, whoa, what's happening? And then him being like in love with the hot goth girl, I'm like, I'm doubling down. And then Will Smith's, basic brother from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is also like, I didn't know what the hell was going on. All I knew is I was going to tune in every week. So like, I happen to be one of those people that the 2016 film didn't work for me. Loved the talent involved, hated fucking everything else. But I have met a billion people who have felt like that was their doorway into this. Answer the second call on Instagram, or some of the girl who runs that page and her friends that team up with her are some of the best people I've ever met at events. But if you do not think that women in flight suits don't encourage more women, then you haven't been there when someone noticed that we had the same last name. And across my chest wasn't Venkman or Zedmore, and it was Rivera. And I have alternate patches with like my mother's maiden name. I have a Velez patch. And I try to kind of rotate it, because the truth is you have to be a little bit of a peck to not realize that sometimes you got to see it before you can dream it, and certainly before you can do it. Janine suiting up in part 4, that was a cheer. Any screening I saw with more than 5 people, that was a cheer moment, because we've been waiting for that for a long time. That's tremendous. It's important. It's needed. It's exciting. And there's ways to do it that are natural, organic, and a lot of fun.
And, I think it's important to think about this too, that like, I love Real Ghostbusters, and this is not a criticism of the cartoon, because I think it's important to remember, right? Like, the cartoon exists and the toys existed, but the toys weren't necessarily representative of the cartoon. Like we've all joked,
No.
I mean, why are the Mondo figures so important to everybody now? Because they represent characters we never got in the cartoon line, the Kenner line. There was never a Sandman. There was never a Samhain. There was never any of these ghosts in that actual toy line because they were inspired by the Real Ghostbusters cartoon, but they weren't really direct one-for-one versions of them. But one of those key things I think I could find criticism about with respect to Real Ghostbusters is, like you said, hey, they always brought Janine along, right? And there's some episodes where she gets to bust ghosts.
Yeah,
but in a lot of the episodes, she's kind of like there as the administrative assistant or the person taking care of the firehouse while they're gone, or her role is to essentially look after Slimer so that Slimer doesn't get into trouble. Yeah, she's kind of got like the mom thing going on, right? And what I like about our current contemporary version of Ghostbusters is that we're breaking from that paradigm. Yes, there's literally a mom inside the firehouse at this point, but like Callie's, in many ways, if you think about it, she's kind of a weird mom, like to the point that her kids talk back to her and point out her foibles and illustrate things that she doesn't really do. She doesn't act very much like a mom. And you've got this very strong character in Phoebe, and that she's an independently minded person who's following in the footsteps of her grandfather, but also has her own character, her own thoughts, her own persona, and her own way of thinking about things that in some ways is different from the dominant paradigm. And so I don't know, like you go back to these old episodes of the Real Ghostbusters and you can see flashes of that. You can find the moments where Janine is out busting with them. But then there's also episodes where like the reason she's out busting with them is because she rubbed a lamp and made a wish from a genie that she could be a Ghostbuster and was in charge of everything.
Oh my God.
So you're gonna have to go watch this now. Like this is, you're gonna have to go find out about this episode. But like there's moments I think that illustrate those access points in the cartoon that were sort of opportunities for people of different gender and identity to engage it, but where we are now almost steps forward from it. And so I hope that the upcoming cartoon pays that forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like as much as I care about whether or not the movies can be made for everybody, it's almost more important to me that a cartoon can be made for everybody, because the folks who end up going to a movie are people who walk into that and they plan to go to it and they're like, I'm going to go check this out. The cartoons that you grew up with were the things that kept you company when you were home after school. Mm-hmm. They were the things that you watched when you didn't feel good, when you were sick. They were the things you asked your parents to put on over and over again. Anybody out there listening right now who's like, yes, I've had to play The Little Mermaid repeatedly for my child. Like, they're the things that as a kid you take comfort in, right? They're the things you go back and watch and then you play as. And so I really hope that as we move forward, not that this is a criticism of Real Ghostbusters as a cartoon, that like we sort of move forward from it and get the cartoon version to have the same sort of contemporary representation, so that way you can give people the opportunities for identification, right? To go, I identify with this. Yeah. And like, I want to know more about this because I see myself in it and I see things I could be in it, and I think that's what makes a kid really love the media that they end up engaging and kind of repping for life. Not that I'm trying to be like, hook them while they're young, but like,
but yes,
like
please,
a tobacco industry.
Young. I want to like it's such a silly thing, and I know you started off this wonderful episode saying you don't nearly suit up as often as you used to. I got to tell you, my plan is to suit up as often as I can till the wheels fall off. This is again for me. It's among the best things I do, and I'm sure I'll slow down. I'm sure it'll be a thing where it'll eventually, hopefully. We'll get some young members that kind of tag in, right? But there are some events that mean so much to me that I hope I'm old and gray and having to explain, why my damn flight suit looks so damn old and ragged is because I'm an 85-year-old being like, here's your toy, child. I'll look like the library ghost. But
I'm now imagining you at 85 years old, like holding a box of cannolis outside an Italian bakery in like Patchogue or something, and you're standing there and somebody's looking at you and going like, Charlie, you got to understand, you can't keep driving the Ecto anymore. You don't have the reflexes. You're going to get yourself killed. And you're standing there going, these are my golden years. And somebody's looking back at you and going, no, look, you got to get some color. Why don't you go out to Coney Island on a boardwalk and get yourself a Nathan's hot dog?
I'm just going to have like a legitimate like khaki, like two-piece tracksuit It'll still have my name on it, still have the patches. You kids nowadays with your Ghostbuster Ecto forces.
If you don't make that now, like if you don't figure out since that's your idea, like you have to make that now as like, yeah, it's the relaxed flight suit. It's all 2-piece tracksuit with zippers. It's made of fleece. It's really soft and comfortable.
Uniform. Be like, I can't help but notice you're out of uniform. You're not wearing your thin gold chain. How will people know how successful you are?
If it was 20 years ago, it would have been like, you need to wear your sweater vest as you drive down Deer Park Ave in your IROC. But
I want an Ecto IROC so bad now.
Yeah, no, you have to. As a Long Islander, that's obviously what you need. Is you got to be like, you have to. You're not Italian enough to rep this, but you could turn around and be like, listen, I drive a Camaro. I eat my mother's meatballs. I'm a good guy. All right, that's how it is. You ever had my mother's meatballs? My mother makes amazing meatballs.
I'm gonna steal. I'm gonna a little bit of stolen Long Island valor. Be like, come on, it's a Long Island thing, not an Italian thing anymore.
There's nothing like a good manicotti. Like I like a good sandwich with some capicola and a nice tall glass of Coca-Cola.
We're gonna have to fly you out for that. I think we'll take the Tetons down on the Ecto. We'll be good.
I'm really glad we did this and we had an opportunity to sort of talk through this episode and also just to catch up and find out about what you're going to be doing with the telethon. I want to remind folks one more time, if you want to check out the telethon, it's happening on the 2nd of December, right?
That's right.
December 2nd.
8 p.m. Eastern. You can check it out on YouTube, but the easiest way to get there is whoyougonnacall.org/toy drive. And if you're a Ghostbusters franchise out there that's doing a toy drive and you haven't signed up to sort of join the movement, head over to www.whoyougonnacall.org/toy drive and click on the big green button that says send us your toy drive info. You can fill out the form there and get listed alongside all of the other toy drop-off locations. There's currently 80 of them with 51 inside the United States, which is crazy. There's one in every state probably. If not, then we got to figure that out. And 29 in Canada. Those Canadians are coming for us. So watch out, everybody. But this has been a lot of fun. Anything else you want to share with folks today before we sort of sign off from this week's episode?
No, just I hope everyone tunes in. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I hope they do too.
You're not going to want to miss this telethon. This is a must watch, a must experience, a must join. If you have an event going on, we want to interview, we want to chat it up, we want to talk all the hot Ghostbuster goss with you. December 2nd, going to be a heck of a day.
That sounded a little much more like you've called 1-900-HOT-GHOST-GOSS.
Tell me about the ghosts of your dreams, just like one of our founders, Ray.
Paranormal investigators are standing by. 1-900-GHOST-GOSS. Like this is
$1.99 a minute. Luna's line is $3.99 a minute.
Kids, ask your parents' permission. Wait, no, don't do that at all. Kids, don't do this at all.
Kids, borrow your parents' credit cards and call.
Some people out there who are younger than us are going, what the hell's a 900 number?
Yeah, those little whippersnappers. They're like, what's a commercial?
Yeah. Wait, people watch appointment-based television? What's that? And there were cartoons that happened after school? Like you had to go get them?
What's Ghostbusters? I was just re-binging New Girl. What are you guys talking about?
I'm so glad we did this and we finally had the chance to sort of all catch up together. And I, as the sort of proverbial Regis and Kathy Lee of Ghostbusting for this month, that's what I'm going to call you. You're running a telethon. I want to wish you a lot of luck with it. I'll be tuning in. If you tune in to watch, you may potentially find that there's a small clip of me in the midst of the telethon.
Ooh,
you'll have to tune in and find
Mm-hmm.
out. You'll have to see if I decide to just use the 30-second greeting in it to just lambast the toy company or do something else inappropriate, which I'm probably not going to do. Or if I just decide to maybe give a greeting where I grant some thanks to folks for all the things that go on and the hard work in the Ghostbusters community that goes on each year as we celebrate Thanksgiving and track into the holiday season. Final thoughts? Anything?
Thank you so much for having us. This was so much fun.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
I can't say it better than that, but I can say, do you want to win all sorts of great stuff? LI Ghostbusters on all social media. Give me your money. I want it. The kids need it. help me do good and maybe win some stuff.
Not just some of the HasLabs.
All of the
HasLabs.
And maybe $400, which is like very against every raffle rule ever. But
you look, let's be real. If you're giving them the $400, then we're not getting the Ecto-1. So let's just downplay the $400 and just, just lean into the fact that the Ecto-1's going to happen. We're going to make it like laws of attraction. We just will it into being.
Here's a real secret. If you've ever won a Long Island Ghostbusters raffle, I always give you a cash option, which is how I was able to turn 10 Proton packs into like 15 raffles. 5 different people were like, money? I'll take money. So that's the secret sauce. Don't be afraid to ask for the buyout option.
Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us this week. And I wish you a ton of luck with the telethon. Thank you for being great people in the community. And I hope to talk to you both real soon.
Heck yeah.
Yes, please. I would love that.
The new Real Ghostbusters watch-along coming soon because Extraplasm doesn't take up enough of his time.
No, of course not. And eventually, hey, you know, we might reach a point where there's less Ghostbusters headlines and things to report on. And in that moment, we're going to need something else to do. And then it's going to be like, let's go back to the well.
Well,
thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, buddy.
Yes, thank you.
Take care. That about wraps things up for Extraplasm this week. I want to say one final thank you to Luna and Charlie for coming on the show this week and chatting with us about everything that they have going on over there at NYC and Long Island Ghostbusters. And of course, all the great work that everybody is doing out there in the community. The last time I checked, there were like over 80 or 90 different toy drives happening listed over on whoyougonnacall.org. So if you haven't already gone over there and signed up to let people know about what your franchise is doing or what charity effort you're running, by all means, go and do that. Go join the movement and be part of a big thing that's happening that we all get to celebrate together at the end of the year and watch really great things happen under the banner of Ghostbusting. Beyond that, I want to say thank you as usual to Brendan Pierce of Beducci Studios, who provides our logo and our visual identity for the podcast. Brendan does a great job, and I'm really glad to say that I recently received some of his most recent figures from Phantasm. I was totally stoked with some of his most recent designs. So keep up the great work, Brendan, and thanks for everything you do for the podcast. And of course, I want to say thank you to Vaporwave artist Magnavox, whose version of Ghostbusters serves as our theme song each week. And I want to say a final thank you and a very happy holiday to you listening out there. This podcast would be nothing without those of you who tune in each week and who chat with me and have things to share and add about the podcast. And I know that there were some very, very spirited responses this past week on the Facebook page with respect to what's happening with the HasLab. I'm really glad that we're all in it to try and be there together for each other as we're coping with the stress of this, of the number of us who want this thing. And is it just the toy? Yeah, it's just the toy. I admit it. But it's also something that I know many of us are highly invested in because we've wanted this just the toy for over 10 to 15 to 20 years. So keep your fingers crossed if you're out there and you're stressing. And even if you're not, if you're like, I'm not backing this thing, I'll still like you. And I'll still tell you to have a happy holiday. Be happy, be healthy, have a great time with your families this week if you're seeing folks. Remember, be grateful, be thankful. And I'm super grateful and thankful for each and every one of you who tune in to Extraplasm. Thank you so much. And I hope to talk to you again next week. Until then, as Ernie Hudson says each and every episode,
try to have fun and always keep on busting. Take care.